Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Very good evening to all the leaders joining from Indian subcontinent. Good afternoon to leaders joining from Middle East. Good morning to all the leaders joining from UK, Europe. And I know there are a few leaders who are stretching themselves to join very early morning from Americas too. I warmly welcome each one of you to the 10th annual Global Business Services Conclave. Yes, this year it's virtual. I know many of you would be participating, regular visitor to the Shared Services Forum. For the last 9 years, we have been doing it all physical. I'm very excited and with all humility, feeling very proud. You know why? That's because of it's a 10th year. We started this knowledge events in 2011, which has become a full-fledged industry association, a platform well acknowledged and recognized for knowledge dissemination. I think we never visualized it. We never imagined it like that. But I'm very proud about it. The mission at Shared Services Forum, as you know, there are 4 typical areas of Shared Services Forum as we focus as part of this platform. The spreading awareness of value and knowledge through events like this, through interactions like this. We do multiple events, sometimes functionally focused like Finance Summit, HR Summit, and so forth. Sometimes horizontal events, focusing all across the business services gamut, looking at technology and digital disruptions and so forth. And we also do a lot of informal conversations, leadership interactions, evening, and so forth. The objective of these events is all about sharing, exchanging learnings, sharing knowledge, sometimes success stories, and sometimes even a failure, because we firmly believe a failure has its own importance and a value in overall learning. Second area, as part of the Shared Services Forum, as you would be knowing, we focus and also have a mission is to establish winning practices through research, and we have a focused research desk which looks at in terms of what next, what has worked well, talking with leaders like you, interacting with leaders like you, and receiving a lot of practices, understanding, and then compiling it together sometime as a capability framework. And you will be happy to know that we have so far done about 20 plus path-breaking frameworks, and they have been well received by the business services space. We also have a quarterly journal by name Process Edge, and I'm sure many of you would be participating, contributing in the Process Edge, being a regular reader as well as contributor to it. And I do encourage each one of you, if not yet, please do contribute to the Process Edge. It's all about by the practitioners, for the practitioners, of the practitioners kind of environment. The third dimension we focus at the Shared Services Forum is recognizing stellar achievements of organization as well as leaders. So we have an Excellence Awards and recognition and felicitation. This is the 10th year. Today as well, and today and tomorrow, we'll be having a few announcements of the awards and recognition. This awards and recognition is completely managed through a very rigorous process. There's an eminent jury panel. We work very closely as a team, and then go through multiple dimensions and parameters to identify it. The intent is how to encourage leaders and the organizations to keep moving on to the journey what they have started. Last but not least, the most important element we focus is building a community, building a family. I think today we are a family from business services industry standpoint, the shared services industry standpoint, where we pick up a line, think of what's happening, bringing more practitioners, views, experts' views, thought leadership, etc., etc. So I think that is something which I think in the last 10 years we have achieved. Let me confess, this would have not been possible. And as I said, I would have never imagined at where we are. possible without the participation, encouragement, contribution from the industry colleague like yours. The way you have taken time out today out of your busy schedule to contribute and participate is phenomenal. And that's what I think has been encouraging us for the last 10 years. Friends and all industry leaders who have always stood behind and supported us in this journey, I really want to be expressing my sincere thanks and grateful to them for making this Shared Services Forum achieve its 10th anniversary. I thank all the partnering organizations in the past as well as this year supporting our mission, our value as a knowledge partner. This year, UST we have as the principal sponsor, corporate sponsors like SEMA and Experience Flow, and technology partner Muniver Technologies. On behalf of Shared Services Forum organizing team, governing council members, I once again warmly welcome each one of you to this wonderful, insightful 2 days and look forward to a great knowledge sharing journey. Few rules as we start, and as you would know, you would have seen this, some of the documents floating with you. There'll be, as every time, there'll be few panelists who will be coming in, and some speakers will be coming in and sharing their experiences. There'll be few people who will be listening, and it's a rotation every time, keeps on happening. Somebody will be listening this time and somebody will be talking next time. It's about, as I said, it's about peer sharing as we do in the industry. The 2 days has been designed such a way that we start now and we finish about 6:45 India time. And similarly, we start tomorrow at 4, we finish about 6:45 India time evening. There will be right now after this a keynote address, and then after that we'll have a panel session followed by another panel conversation, followed by excellence awards and recognition announcement for a few of the awards today evening. Tomorrow when we start at 4 o'clock, we have an interesting session from a doctor, a practitioner, talking about the lifestyle and how to connect with some of the ailments like diabetes, etc. Which is something which is very different, and you all as a professional should find some time to listen to it. We continue with another panel. That panel is again a very interesting one, which will talk about outsmarting digital disruption. And then we have a last panel, but a very important one, which is talking about the overall business panorama to look at how this tectonic shift in culture is going to be critical for the next normal. With that, we will come to the final session tomorrow with an excellence awards and recognition. So some awards will be announced tomorrow and so on. And with that, we'll close this conclave. So just wanted to give you a sense of how we are going to move from today to tomorrow, and certainly urge you all to continue to be part of this journey today and tomorrow as well. With this, I would like to welcome Ravi Ramakrishnan to do a keynote address. And before I pass on to him, I think all speakers' profiles are circulated. It is available on the website as well. So I'm not going to read about it. And I think Ravi doesn't need even introduction. I think Ravi is one of the doyen of this business services space. I think the last, particularly to 25 years, 2.5 decades, the way he has, with his passion, grit, and guidance and mentorship to many leaders across the industry, the way he has, brought his thought leadership, it's always going to be a pleasure listening to you, Ravi. Thanks for finding this time. I'm going to pass on to Ravi and request you to enlighten us with some of the thought process. So over to Ravi, and I'll come back after that. Thank you. Ravi, you can hear me?
Thank you, Rakesh. I think it's a pleasure to come to this virtual e-Conclave. I think as you rightly started and set the tone, this is the 10th conclave event for us in Shared Services Forum. It's a very important year for us. And I think it's also, gaining importance from the business and industry point of view. And as, Rakesh was describing, what we have got today is an excellent theme. a theme which is very, very relevant and futuristic. It is not something which is, something one can actually say, can I do something tomorrow? But surely our idea in this conclave is take some nuggets of wisdom from multiple leaders and move towards the what we call I'm sharing the screen. I hope it's visible to all of you, and it's a pleasure to, get ahead with this interesting theme of escape velocity. And what I'm really going to share with you, some of my thoughts in this 15 minutes or so, is the power of escape velocity in business. I think, escape velocity, I'm sure all of you would have spent enough time to connect the dots in terms of how, the gravitational pull is to be managed by the rockets to escape and then get onto the space. So while there's so much talking about this, and I'm sure one of the metric I can share with you for escaping the escape velocity is 11.2 kilometers per second, which is something like 40,000 kilometers per hour, the fastest speed that a rocket can take to get out of the space and get away from the gravitational pull. In that kind of a context, I think we are really looking at how this kind of a concept is applicable for business for us. So let me just share some of the thoughts. I'm sure this is something which would strike a very connect for many of us, because in the last 10 to 11 months, the COVID and the COVID-19 has given up a lot of information around black swan or gray rhino. I mean, I'm not going to describe beyond a point, but I think there are views that the COVID-19 is both a black swan and a gray rhino. So just for a quick snapshot as to what that actually means, a black swan event is something which can't be predicted and has a profound effect on markets. Having said that, it has retrospective predictability. That's how the focus is. And I'm sure many of us would have received a lot of videotapes about how someone predicted it in 2015, 2018, and so on and so forth. So it's a black swan in one way. But there's another way, which is it's a gray rhino, which is it's an economic risk that people choose not to act despite the potential for harm. This is very interesting. I think I think jury is still not out in terms of whether it's a gray rhino or a black swan. But I surely would like to share with you that a philosophy which we all understand, the life can be only understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. So we need to be conscious that how we need to balance between what we understand backwards with how do we live in the future. So in that kind of context, how does escape velocity come into the picture? Simply put, the idea of escape velocity is free the company's future from the pull of the past. The gravitational pull is really the pull of the past. I think we all, as industry leaders or industry practitioners, we tend to go by what has happened in the past. We tend to look at into the future, but not completely de novo. I think we need to kind of make sure that we are free from the company's future. And that really would mean, crossing the chasm, because that's the first level of movement when we want to move towards escape velocity. So where does it lead to? We need to apply a force that is greater than the inertial momentum of current operations, because we are all, I can see it in the last 15 years, several times over and over again. And, when people talked about Black Swan in terms of 2008-9 or Black Swan as September 11, whatever it is. But today, when we talk about COVID, which has got what we really talk about, unprecedented impact across the globe, it has affected everyone, all industries, and therefore we need to apply a force that is greater than the inertial momentum of current operations. And that brings us into a tornado, as a kind of a storm which we actually self-create to make sure it's like the rocket is ready for takeoff or the launch of the vehicle, And as we move towards it, the escape velocity actually happens when the power surplus in organizations to break free from the past legacies to capitalize on the next gen opportunities. I think that is what we are really need to be doing, as we progress into the 2021 and beyond. And that's what we will deliberate in this 2 days of interactions. How do we break free? This is an interesting term, what happens? How do we do this? I think we need to move towards anti-fragility. It's actually a term which has been used by the same professor who used the term Black Swan, Taleb. And he has actually, coined this as an opposite of fragile. Having said that, it is not rigidity. I must, surely kind of clarify, because it actually comes across with that kind of a clarity. Having the anti-fragility has not been so much in use today. It has not yet been part of our accepted business terminologies. And that's why you find it is not indicating success or growth. But we are very sure, as Rakesh was sharing about, we really want to look at what kind of practices one has to look at for the future. Anti-fragility is one of the important practice we need to understand and absorb and apply in our organizations, whether it is business or business services. What does it mean actually? Fragile is damaged by disorder. It's anything which is touched, fell, a glass breaks or anything, even a can kind of get pressed and so on. Resilient has been very often used. Even today, it's the best term which has been used by organizations is resilience. Having said that, escape velocity can happen when you actually become anti-fragile, which is you are not just not affected, but you actually benefit from the disorder. How do you leverage the turbulence? Like someone said, how will you make the best use of the crisis? That's the way it is. You have to really profit from this situation rather than, so that's what anti-fragility is all about. And you do it in two ways. You exploit and explore turbulence. That's what the focus is in terms of escape velocity. Now, to give a broad context, as McKinsey had done a study very recently, actually it is as recent as January 2021, where they have said 95% of the economic profit is earned by top 20 companies. How do they do it? They activate the power of imagination to visualize future risks and disruptions. I think it's very important for us to talk about imagination. I think one of the biggest challenges we find is we tend to innovate, which is very important. We don't want to take away the power of innovation. Having said that, there's a need to imagine, look at the future very differently, and that will make sure, and we even talked in last year conclave, we talked about how do we look at disruptional engineering, how do we engineer disruptions on our own and make a difference, So what does it mean? You look beyond existing paradigms, beyond current customers, partners, and competitors, and look at the broader powers of the market and the ecosystem. So you visualize, you strategize. That's how you really come to that. Without visualization, strategies of no meaning in today's conversation. Finally, and I would like to make sure to re-emphasize, I'm using the word re-emphasize, don't reimagine. One of the things I know in the last 10 years, having been in the industry, a lot of people talk about, I want to do reimagining this strategy, reimagining that strategy. But I think sometimes there's still a hangover of what we have done in the past. The escape velocity can be achieved only when we are free from the past legacies. And therefore, I'm actually making a bold statement to say, don't reimagine. Wag your imagination. What is wag? Work against gravity for your imagination. That's what it means. It's actually wagging your imagination. I'm using it as a verb for the future. And focus on bold moves, not just on bold plans. It is about action. It is not just about planning, but planning is equally important. But make sure we focus on action. So we really look at visualization, we strategize, and we operationalize. That's how the escape velocity actually happens. So identify disruptions. What do we do when you imagine? Identify disruptions. I said engineer disruptions. By promoting entrepreneurial mindset, I think this is very important. One of the things we all know that whenever there is an entrepreneur making a big impact, we know, oh, this particular organization or individual has created a disruptive, invention. I think what we need to do today is, because disruptions are becoming usual, regular, all the time, actually you will find more gray rhinos. We know very well. One best example I can give you of gray rhino today is data security and data privacy. All of us know working from home has a challenge from a data privacy and data security. I know a lot of IT folks and a lot of large organizations are focused on it, but it's a gray rhino sitting in front of us. If we don't do anything today, it will become a huge disruption of a sort for us to manage in the future. So let's try and look at entrepreneurial mindset to be developed within the organization to identify disruptions. Combine speed with simplicity. I think the environment is very complex. The requirement is, while you have to move at a great speed, the second dimension for us is simplicity. It's very important. Like escape velocity has got momentum, thrust, and everything put together. I think we need to make sure that the speed combines with simplicity. Scale up the ability to learn and innovate. Innovation will still be there, but you imagine to innovate, not innovate per se. And to give you a simple example, people talk about digital disruption. It's not about creating a list of digitalization of priorities. It's not about that. It's actually about identifying where you are vulnerable and where you can create value. So it's not just about, I've seen a lot of digital transformation programs, but I think they really look at priorities to say, how can I digitalize something? No, it's about the business. It's about vulnerability of the business and make sure how do we really identify and understand those to create value. Having said, I think I need to touch upon business services. It's very important because of business and business services. First one, from a business services point of view, global business services, 2Ps, protect the core, pivot to new opportunities. That I think is very, very important. That's the first message I would like to share from escaping velocity. Think business and then business services. I think this is very important. Quite often, business services, tends to focus inward. It has to look at outward externally, completely from the customer into the business to the business services. Third one, right talent is scarcer than capital in the future, because how we can identify disruptions, how we can engineer disruptions, how we can create anti-fragility is what is going to make a difference. And these all will come with talent and leadership. It's not just going to come with just a certain amount of thinking differently. combine data and digital. Of course, there is no way I can escape not to mention about digital, but make sure we combine data and digital. That's absolutely critical to look at. It is no longer just predictive analytics. I know we have a lot of talk about it. I think today it has to go much beyond and look at what kind of analytics one would really look at. And actually, I would even say one step beyond. Can we actually look at predictive synthesis? Because sometimes you break down things, but you don't assemble things back. I think what is important in the future, if you have to look at anti-fragility, can we look at predictive synthesis coming out of various analytics which are coming and not just analytics which breaks it down? And last but not the least, from a business services point of view, is develop and nurture ecosystem. It's absolutely crucial. Everything cannot be done by us. You can distribute the risk. You can avail the disruptions happening in the marketplace very quickly. And that's the way the escape velocity can actually happen. The power of velocity is really huge. Achieving escape velocity is really our options choice today. We have to. Actually, as someone said, if you don't do that, you are living on borrowed time. There is no time left if you don't have the focus on escaping velocity. Given this, I just want to kind of finally share that let's not change gears, let's change vehicles. And that too, given the kind of escaping velocity, not just aircrafts, but to rocket, beyond aircraft to rocket. So we're all set to launch, and let's focus on how we can future-proof or engineer disruptions. That's the way I see it. I think it's a great way to see this 2 days. I'm really looking forward to listening to all the panelists, all the experts, all the practitioners who are coming in. And I think it's going to be a very, very useful, productive days. And I want to share that please be clued on to the entire 2 days and listen to all the panel discussions. Over to you, Rakesh, all yours.
Thanks, Ravi. It was, as always, great to hear you, and the kind of context which you have set. It's going to be important for us to keep that the same context moving on and building it further as we go through the panel conversations the next today and tomorrow. And that's what I think we will target to do that. And really, what you said about moving from an aircraft to rocket is the need of the hour, and that's what we like to build it further. So with this, guys, thank you, Ravi. And with this, we are moving to the next panel, the first panel of the day. This is interesting. This panel has some leaders who have their varied experience and journey. They have varied experience in terms of disruption and transformation. The difference is of what nature and what size in the last 1 year. It is something which is just very different altogether, as we know. So as I start, I would like to welcome my fellow panelists here. I can see Alison Henriksen joining in from London. Hi, Alison. Very good morning to you.
Hi, Rakesh.
Very nice. Nice to see you, Alison. So folks, whoever have joined in virtually, they know very clearly the speaker profiles have been circulated, but still I would like to quickly highlight about Alison. For 2.5 decades of finance experience, worked across multiple geographies, played finance director roles with the larger organizations, and in the current role, working, really trying to create something which is a market disruptor, working with an agri biotech company focused on animal genetics. So welcome, Alison, to this panel. I have another panelist with me, Sumit Ray, Dr. Sumit Ray. Sumit, can you hear me? Sumit, you are on mute.
Sorry, hello, it's Sumit Mitra.
Very nice to see you, Sumit. Sumit, of course, brings a great experience from the two large organizations which he has dealt with, of course, many other roles, etc., and many kinds of roles within the organization. But this too is a very interesting organizational roles like British Telecom and with Tesco, where he represents the organization today, running a large global business services. And you have been phenomenal in creating and building the, if I can say, the industry in global India, Sumit. So very warm welcome to you to this panel. I have a third co-panelist with me, Mr. Amitav Ray. Amitav, can you hear me?
Hello.
Warm welcome, Amitav.
Yes.
Of course, Amitav is it's less to talk about the kind of passion he brings in as a passionate leader, a futuristic a leader, an author, and so on and so forth. And the kind of journey which you have traveled in the last 2.5 decades, Amitav, with the organizations like IBM and now with Ericsson, and leading a very interesting kind of combination of work is phenomenal. So I'm going to really be pleased to have all three of you in this panel. So welcome you, Amitav, as well. So Amitav, you can hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. There was a blip in the between for a second, so I was just wondering that the network. I think these are the disruptions and turbulence we'll have to start living with. I think, in the beginning when I started this conclave, as I was talking about, this is the 10th year of the conclave, and 9 years we have been doing a lot of this physical events. So there, the kind of turbulence were very different. The flights not landing on time, the speakers not reaching the venue on time, or the screens going off, the projectors not working, or something like that, or the hotel guys all of a sudden having something to construct and there's a noise around. Now today the disruption is of a different nature, or the turbulence of a different nature. IT is not working. There's an upgrade, downgrade which is required because all of a sudden somebody who's a panelist will pop up, and my backend team is required to move him into a different role. That's a different kind of a turbulence. And that is where I wanted to start with. And I think this is nothing new. We all know change is inevitable. Change is only constant, is what we talk for years. Having said that, very recently I coined a term called ocean change. And if I request my backend panelists, backend team to put all 4 of us on the screen, please. I can see only 2 of us on the screen. Yeah. So the very interestingly, that term, I coined a term called ocean change, friends, because we have been talking about sea change. Or there's a sea change, and I felt the last year was an ocean change. It was not a sea change. I know the Oxford still to buy that word, but that's the way it is. It's an ocean change, and for the first time in the history of the mankind, that's a kind of turbulence we witnessed, we experienced. The difference was the kind of a reach it had, the kind of magnitude and the impact it had was very different versus many of the disruptions which we might have experienced in the past. And that's why even just before this, when Ravi was talking about, till last year we were propagating, we were trying to communicate, engineer our own disruption. In fact, the kind of disruption happened last year was of a very different nature altogether. So one of the things which has become very common as we talk about is that very, very clear to us is that the old normal, what we knew, is not going to come back. So there has to be something called next normal, very clearly. And the next normal we're talking about, the only normal is disruption as the usual, and disruption and usual as the business as usual. That is what we're going to have a discussion just now. Now, there's an interesting rhyming words, and please pardon me, I keep on using it. So I've used a DAU and a BAU and a TAU. So DAU, is a disruption as usual, as the business as usual. In the TAU, it's turbulence as unusual environment, right? So we have to look at these 3 DAUs, BAUs, and TAU, and then build on it in terms of the next normal. There are a lot of things which has changed. The elevation of consumerism, Bruderi. I don't remember last when I went out to a supermarket and Tesco. I mean, that's where, Sumit, I would like to come to you. I was saying, how life has changed for us. Everything has changed in terms of supply chain. Earlier, we used to talk about this country is good in terms of producing this, etc., or looking at technology. The whole, I was talking with somebody and he was saying, the virtual, it was very difficult to talk about that. Come on, Teams, and we'll collaborate and we'll work together. Today, Teams and WebEx and Zooms are the only way you live and eat. I mean, you can forget anything else, but you can't forget your some of these virtual equipments to connect and so on and so forth. So it has changed substantially. And with this context, I wanted to start the conversation among us, and maybe I'll request, it'll be helpful if Alison, you can pick the first point and share your inputs in terms of. So as I say, the pandemic and its related lockdown brought some of the most innovative and bright solutions. Let's be acknowledging that fact. Of course, some of the scenarios, the way it was implemented was maybe responding to it or reacting to it. Still the unpredictable turbulence is demanding to leave very clearly the past and focus on future. So what has gone bygone, now let's focus on the future. So where I wanted to get your perspective is from your industry point of view, how do you think organizations of today should build up their future strategies, given that disruption may actually become a consistent reality? So we'd like to hear from you, Alison. Over to you.
Okay, thanks, Rakesh. That's a big question. I guess. Well, what I would say, our company is what we do is we provide genetic improvement in porcine and bovine, so pigs and cows. And actually, as a company, our animal disease has been a bigger disruptor for us than COVID-19 was. So as a company, we actually went through, in our world, a huge disruption actually in 2018 and 2019 with the occurrence of African swine fever in China. And in the porcine world, that was a global event because half of the global porcine market is in China. And as a result of that disease, half of the herd in China died or had the disease. So we experienced as a company that disruption, albeit a disease, affecting animals, as opposed to now the pandemic we're all dealing with COVID. But I think it's nevertheless interesting as I reflect back on, how did we react to that? How have we reacted since? Because that's continued to affect our market as well as COVID on top of that. And I guess what I would say is, how do you prepare for disruption? How do you create disruption? What Genus has always done is planned multiple strategies in multiple geographies, so that an event, even something as momentous as that, is something that can be managed and dealt with, and come out stronger at the other end. And that is what's happened to our company. So we saw a dramatic drop in demand in China in 2019 for our genetics because the herd had depleted so much. But since then, what's happened is that there's been a recovery of the market. And because of the strategies and the bold moves that we've made in the past to position ourselves in that market, we're leading in that market now, and we're growing very rapidly in that market as we come out of the other side of that huge disruption. And that is, I guess, part of business as usual, coming out the other side and absolutely maximizing the opportunity that you can take. So that was an experience, I guess, before COVID hit. But to how did we react when COVID did hit? Well, I guess my immediate go-to reference was, well, what happened in the last time we had a global crisis? And I think it was really the global financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. So it was immediately going back to the statistics and saying, well, what happened to the porcine market at that point in time? And history was an interesting reference point because it did highlight that it's quite a robust market, and people eat pork regardless of the economics. However, what we didn't anticipate was in our market actually a black swan that occurred because of COVID. So what happened was in the US, because of COVID, the pork processing plants were forced to close. So back in April, May time, the US suffered a dramatic decline in pork processing production. It was down to 60% capacity. And that was something that never happened in the history of pork production. So something that was not anticipated. And it didn't matter how much you looked at history, it was just something nobody had considered could really happen. But again, you know, a big disruption, but I guess, you know, how did we cope with that? Well, it was continuing to support our customers because they were the farmers who were supplying into the processing plants. And I think there's a piece around, you know, showing empathy for the customer, as well as giving, you know, giving practical and support and continuing supply. So we took an action which was not requested by our customers at all, but we decided to be very proactive and approach them and completely change the terms that they had with us in their favor. And economically for them, it was not a significant thing because we're about 2% of their cost. But in terms of the impact it had on the customer and the relationship, it was much more significant than that because of the empathy that we showed and that loyalty, I guess, we showed as their suppliers. So I could talk more. There's so many more examples, you know, during this period, but they're just a couple of stories from our business.
Sure, Alyssa. I think it was good to hear the experience which you connected your dot with the last global crisis and how you built on it. I have a couple of questions on that. I'll come back to you. Maybe I'll just hear first from Amitav, and I'll request Amitav if you can just share a little bit about your experience, and particularly if I have to just, you know, check with you, you know, it seems fear of disruption is causing more panic than the disruption itself, you know. However, the industry did well, no doubt, and considering multiple things. How did your organizations is working towards aligning with the fears and doubts of employees and customers to keep their faith? Because as you know, the kind of competitions which is growing and becoming fierce, the kind of customer loyalty, I think even Alison was talking about. So what has been your experience to keep it from the employee point of view as well as from the customer point of view? And what are the few things which you are visualizing, if you can also talk through as you go ahead? So both how you have done it and what kind of things we're looking at, Amitav, will be helpful to hear from.
Thanks, Rakesh, and very good afternoon to all of you. It's indeed a pleasure to be here with such a large number of talented and experienced leaders like yourself. I thank Shared Services Forum for providing me the opportunity to interact with you. It's really a privilege and honor. You know, I think that's a very important question, and all of you are stalwarts in your own field. So I'm confident that as practicing leaders, you all know much more about managing disruption, because that's DAU and BAU thing we discussed. You face uncertainty, I think, every day, right, in your work, and you all know how to handle it. Okay, so here are a couple of things I would like to say. No, we all do plan A, plan B, plan C. But before that, let me ask all of you a question. How many of you drive a car? By the way, I drive most of the time. I'm sure you must have guessed by now that why I asked the question. The way we drive on roads here, and I'm saying in India, you know how to drive, you know the rules, but is that enough to drive safely? You need to be very, very alert. You need to have an intuition, and in sports terminology, that is called a peripheral vision. as what the cars, buses, lorries, autos are going to do, and they're around you, right? Are they going to change their course suddenly? So no matter what you do, you cannot manage that uncertainty, and you can only anticipate. You embrace uncertainty, okay, and be prepared for it. So in a similar way, I think organization like ours, we prepare ourselves, leaders like ours, we prepare ourselves to embrace the uncertainty whenever we run business. Uncertainty will be a certainty, and then that's something, is becoming a cliche these days. So no matter how much you plan, no matter how good you are in preparing that business plan or risk management plan, you, I think, cannot avoid uncertainty. So we all know how to embrace uncertainty. I think that's my first point. As business leaders, let's be prepared for uncertainty and embrace it, and be always alert. I think Ravi mentioned also about some of the disruption in the past we faced in like Lehman Brothers collapse. Let me share a couple of examples from my short span of career. My first facing the uncertainty as a team leader, not a business leader at that point in time, was in 2001. And then at that point in time, I used to work in PricewaterhouseCoopers and PwC as a partner in their consulting practice. And that's the first time we were planning to work in a collaborative manner and try to get our first customer in the US. That was the evening when we are supposed to, present the final proposal. We had already created a team around us. And what happened, in a couple of hours from then, and we are going to present in the evening India time, which will be early morning East Coast time. Somebody called me and said, "We'll come upstairs and have a look at the television." And I saw it was in September 2001, the Twin Tower collapsing in front of our eyes. That presentation never happened. That proposal didn't go through. I was sitting around a number of very anxious faces. We lost 3 of our colleagues. They were in one of those planes in that terror attack. And everything got so unsettled. So that is my first experience as a young professional to face uncertainty. You just cannot control anything. You just cannot do anything about it. The next one came pretty soon with Enron bankruptcy. Now, I was part of a Big Four consulting company or auditing company, and Enron thing happened. And you know what happened next to that. In October 2002, Sarbanes-Oxley's Act was produced and approved in US, and they asked all the companies in the similar business to get out of consulting business. PwC sold its consulting arm to IBM, and my life changed forever. Okay, I could not control that either. September 2008, as Ravi mentioned, Lehman Brothers collapse in US. All our major projects stopped, and I was working in IBM at that point in time. Customers stopped spending money, and we had to come back and pivot back to a new kind of proposal, how we can go and start engaging with customers with a very, very different kind of business model, right? So, you have to prepare yourself for that. And in January this year, right, last year, 2020, COVID-19 happened. So a global pandemic of this nature is different from economic crisis we faced earlier. The Great Depression or the dot-com bubble, a bust in 2000, 2008 financial meltdown. They were kind of triggered by a single event primarily, and which lasted for a few months or years. Okay, but what I have seen, that there's this human endeavor to continuously, work and find new ways to survival, even innovate. And there's a very interesting link between innovation and in these crises. Harvard political economist Joseph Smumter long ago argued that the crisis was seabed of innovation and entrepreneurship. So I come from a technology company, so I'll talk about what kind of innovation we have seen in technology. Okay, innovation developed during crises are huge. We could argue that each of these crises, they unleashed an economic condition after they're restored, it unleashed huge amount of innovation in the field. It's interesting, like economists track patents granted from 1901 to 2005, and there were clear spike in innovative activities during the long depression of 1870s and 1880s and the Great Depression of 1930s. Okay, I can give you a couple of examples like magnetic tape recording, helicopter, nylon, the ballpoint pen, were even milestone innovations during the 1929 depression. So, I think companies like us and all of you, the companies you represent, they prepared themselves for such depression these days and work around it.
I think building on this, Amitabh, as you were talking about, I think the whole preparation and planning for disruption, I think one of the experience which has happened just last year in this pandemic, and this is one of the experience, and as you rightly talked about many things in the past as well. The difference of the last year was it was the impact, as we talked about, the magnitude, the reach, etc., versus many of the disruptions in the past. One thing where I would request if Sumit, you can share your thoughts. We are talking about this responding to the disruption. We're talking about being prepared to respond to this disruption. We're talking about innovation. I think Amitabh talked about this innovation very nicely. I think, how do you see that there is a very critical need to first have that imagination ahead of the innovation? So you need to even start visualizing it, before even you start innovating it, and then you start preparing for the disruption. So if you just want to share your quick experience in terms of your pandemic experience, but more than that, if you can just bring it to this specific point, how do you see that imagination before innovation and being then preparing for this disruption as usual? How do you see that?
Hi, and thank you, Rakesh. I'm Sumit. I head up Tesco Global Business Services for Tesco. And those of you haven't heard of Tesco, Tesco is the largest food retailer in Europe. We are across 5 countries, have around 6,000 stores, 90 million shopping trips a week from our customers, plus online. So as you can imagine, we were hit by COVID in a different way. Where our volume significantly went up. I would come up with a quote from Eisenhower, who once said, planning is useless, but plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. So when we saw what was happening around Wuhan, in Iran, in Italy, we were kind of anticipating what's going to hit us and what's going to happen. Just to give you an example, I'll share with you some statistics from a Tesco perspective. We used to do, up till about 15th of March, we were doing 600,000 orders online per week. And that was maximum capacity. And our CEO was banging on about how we should really double our business. And the business plan was, we need £50 million investment. We need a 5-year business plan to get to doubling our business. By 23rd of March, we were doing million orders. By mid of April, we were doing 1.4 million. Now we are at 1.6 million orders a week. So we've well more than doubled our business in a few months. If I look at the volume in terms of, if you think about after Christmas in the new year, what you do is you do a lot of promotions. You make sure people buy in bulks, and you sell your stocks. And what you don't want to do right in the middle of a pandemic is people bulk buying, your customers bulk buying. So how do you take off 10 million promotions over a weekend from 6,500 stores? How do you make sure your customers are safe? So one of the things that our exec committee did really well was we chalked out some guiding principles in some terms of how do we handle this pandemic. Now, as I said, that planning is useless, right? So what we said was we're going to be very agile as a business, and we will take decisions as we go along, but we will set a set of guiding principles. And one of the most important guiding principles, we said we will put our purpose before our profit. And the purpose is serving our shoppers a little better every day. That's our purpose. So how do we make sure that everything that we do in our business is purpose-led and it doesn't matter about the profit? So our CEO disrupted the space by writing to almost 900,000 customers, vulnerable customers, who diabetic or older or who couldn't go out to do the shopping. So we wrote to them to say, we will block a slot for you from a home delivery perspective. And we didn't know how this is going to happen because we were frantically working in the background to create those slots. But I think our CEO wrote to all those individuals to say, Tesco is here for you. So order it online. We will help you to order online and we will deliver it at home. So I think, and obviously it cost us far more to deliver at home than somebody coming into your stores and buying those. So that changed. Also, we made sure that the range is there for our customers, because customers who are coming into your stores are not going to make multiple trips in a week because there's a long queue. There is a lot of nervousness, safety precautions that our customers need to take. So how do you make sure that when customers come in, they get all their need in that one shopping and they don't need to go into multiple stores? So we made sure the range and availability for our customers was always there. So that really helped us. I'll give you another example. On 23rd of March, we had 48,000 colleagues in the UK, 48,000 colleagues who were off sick, had COVID symptoms, or who classified themselves as vulnerable and couldn't come in to work in our stores. And now your footfall has gone up because people are panic buying and coming into your supermarket, and you don't have your colleagues in stores to support them and customers who are panicking. So we hired 52,000 colleagues in 3.5 weeks, which is absolutely unprecedented. And it would generally take us a year, if not more, to hire 52,000 colleagues. But we did it. We did it because it was the right thing to do. We continued to pay our colleagues who were off sick, who were vulnerable. We hired colleagues who lost their jobs. There are other retailers who were suffering really badly. So we said, we will take their expertise and bring them into food retailing. So these are some of the behaviors that we drove. But the most important bit was, how do you react to this as an organization? So you could easily think about, okay, this is a great time, people are buying, how can you increase your profit? So it's available in public domain. We took a hit of almost 800 million pounds on our P&L to do what's right. But what was the impact? What was the net impact? The impact of this is, by driving and doing what is right rather than doing the right things, we had 1.2 million net new customers who came into our stores. And from number 6 brand in the UK, we became in 2020 number 1 brand in the UK from a Tesco perspective. And we feel extremely privileged as Tesco employees that we fed nations during crisis. And that is what drove us. And there are colleagues who work 16, 20 hours a day. If I look at my business services in India, Budapest, people were adjusting to this. I don't like the word new normal because the world has always been like this. VUCA world. So people, while they were adjusting themselves, working from home, managing their children, managing their cooking, managing their household stuff, and putting in those hours to support our customers, has been phenomenal and incredible. And nobody came back to say, oh, I need overtime, I need this, I need that. But they were so privileged, and we all lined ourselves towards the purpose of feeding nations. That really helped us to drive the right behavior. And I want to finish off by one thing which really talks about our company and how we've created that food brand in the UK, is that we got some government funding. We got almost 600 million pounds from the government as rate reduction. But the board unanimously, 6 months later, returned that 600 million back into the economy to say, you know, as a food retail business, we've done really well. Our revenues have gone up. So it's important that we give that money back to the society to help other retailers who hasn't done so well. And the thought that I want to leave behind to all the audience here is that it's about the purpose. Profit is a consequence. I think sometimes we run after revenue and profit. I think that's a consequence. I think if we stick to values and purpose, you can build an organization that creates value for shareholders and colleagues.
I think it's a very good experience sharing from you, Sumit. And I think particularly the point in terms of how to win that customer loyalty even in the time of disruption. The way you talked about, it's not about just the profitability, looking at the right things, and where from moving from brand, the top 6 to moving up the ladder and becoming one of the great brands. I think these are a few things which is very important to keep in the mind as I hear from you, from ensuring the customer loyalty and thinking of customer and not being over focused in that specific duration of saying, okay, I can make more revenue, I can make more profit this point of time, and let things about it. How you're looking at a long-term point of view using the disruption becomes very important. I think it's a good point which you're sharing when somebody wants to visualize it. Now, as move to the second half of this conversation, I will request each one of you to be quite brief, very brief, maybe if I can say a quick 30-second, 40 seconds kind of thoughts and responses will be very, very enabling. And I know there are a lot of people, close to 200 people who have logged in and listening to us. If they have questions, they're already putting few questions up. They should feel free to please put your questions up. You can even direct the question to which panelist you want to ask. We'll try to see how much we can take the next 25-30 minutes of the time what we have. But I just want to build the conversation ahead, and I want to go back to you, Alison, just to check for this whole point about this customer and the way this entire disruption has happened, and the kind of industry you are in. The reach to the customer is very different. It was supposed to be more, one is more of R&D, but the same point of time also reaches, more on the folks on the ground, and this whole change, which stops in a way from reaching to those customers for you on the ground and becoming very difficult in terms of your sales feet on the street is not able to really move the way it is. How are you visualizing your next normal in that context? A, and B, this is once which has happened and you may be able to visualize something, but how are you making that as a part of your business as usual, thinking that, okay, it can come back, something else may happen, and so on and so forth. So how are you looking at customer reach and customer engagement and not letting them go and not letting them leave Genus? How are you looking at that, Alice?
Sure, Rakesh. Yes, I think that's absolutely this situation has accelerated how we are changing the way that we're engaging with our customers. So our customers are farmers. And for those who have been exposed to the agricultural industries, they are generally conservative. So, our engagement with the customer is typically face-to-face. And particularly in the dairy industry, there is an expectation that our people will drive down the farm drive and have those face-to-face discussions with the customer, whether it's to sell or whether it's to just talk to him about his business and how we can support his operations. But yes, COVID changed that situation very dramatically because our people just couldn't do that. And of course, it was different depending on which part of the world we're talking about. But the market that particularly stood out for our business was Latin America, where we have a very big supply of genetics for the beef industry, as well as for the dairy industry. And if you, of course, you know, Brazil, one of the biggest beef markets in the world, but a very big country geographically too. So, you know, if you think about it, a lot of people having to travel long distances in the past to reach customers. But what our team did was they really got on the front foot and really developed their marketing and engagement with the customer through digital means, which has just never been done before in our industry, and did it in simple ways as well. So using WhatsApp, which is a very popular in Latin America, but achieved incredible e-commerce statistics in effect that we are continuing to grow at a rapid pace. And it's really challenged the rest of our organization, other parts of the world, to think about how best can we engage with the customer in the future? Is there another way we can do it? So it's absolutely, I guess, front and center now of our sales and marketing strategy. Whereas I would have said, you know, a year ago before COVID started, it was definitely something we were starting to talk about, but certainly the timeline has dramatically shortened in terms of how quickly we're able to move that forward.
Sure. Well, thanks. I think it was a good experience, the way you talked about you have handled something in the Brazil, and now you're thinking to make some of these as a part of your future strategy, because of course, you know, it needs to be relooked, the entire the market once again. I think one of the point which I also get from you, and even Sumit was talking earlier about, was that if you let go of that customers who are loyal and don't find the ways you will be able to give them the comfort and confidence, you are going to lose them. Second, if you're thinking of a lot of incremental transformations, it is not going to work in this environment. You have to be radical about it. And you need to be absolutely thinking of how can I dominate it? Otherwise, it will be too late. And there's a lot of competition, which is also becoming very fierce in terms of how to go and capture the market. So it's a fantastic point Alison has talked about. Amitabh, just very quickly to check with you, you know, this whole point about technologies we used to talk about earlier by saying, technology is an enabler, technology is a supporter, technology, whatever is required, etc., etc. Now, in fact, I used to even talk about by saying, Amitabh, ITS to ITBS, you know, IT enabled services was 20 years back. Till date, people are still talking about ITS, then something which is not correct. It is all integrated technology business services, if I can say something like that. So how much of these futuristic technologies will play an important role as part of the organization's plan for disruption as usual? Should they still continue to see business and technology as two components, or is it the time which has come that you can't plan anything without seeing these two together? Amitabh, your inputs on that. I'll request my panelists to be brief from here on. So I just want to cover a little bit more, and Amitabh, please.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think it's a very valid observation. IT and business, or technology or business, cannot be seen differently. COVID. A lot of us were talking here about what happened after COVID-19, but in business, as I was saying, the disruption is always, it has been there, right? And then leadership has to act. Earlier the disruption were primarily driven by technological changes, right? Now we can see the other kind of disruptions as well. So I think you'll have to look at it as central part, like even after COVID, like when we were talking about working from home and things like that. I think it's becoming more important to adopt the mixed reality kind of technologies, like with AR and VR and holographic technology, and those things will come. One thing for sure, the fourth industrial revolution has been telescoped a few years by this current pandemic, right? So we'll see faster adoption of this technology in each and every business. So more automation and more technology-driven things.
Very, very nice. Thank you for sharing a quick inputs on that, Amitabh. And you're right. I think there's all AR, VR, blockchain, etc., etc. I mean, it's also what I hear from you is that there could be multiple kinds of technologies, but it needs to be weaved into your business context, and then accordingly, look at. And it should not be absolutely seen as two different things, business and technology plan for it. That's what I hear from you. I'll just quickly take an input from you, Sumit, in terms of looking at this, this whole plan for future. We're talking about preparing the people for the future is a daunting task, right? Given this, still this is quite elusive in terms of what is the future of work going to look like, what is going to exist, what is going to die, what will be, the scenarios, etc., etc. What kind of competencies are likely to become a value as we go ahead? And how do you see your organization equipping itself and its employees to be ready in that context? If you can just throw a bit of a quick light on that, will be helpful.
Thank you, Rakesh. I will add a little bit on your previous point, on your previous question, is that I think sometimes we depend too much on technology, thinking technology is this shiny bullet train that will take us from one place to another. But for a bullet train to run, you need the tracks. And I think the two tracks of that technology bullet train is the culture of the organization and also your processes of your organization. Technology is useless if your process is all over the place. So I just want to add that. Now, if I am to put my crystal ball in front of me and look at the future, if you see what European Commission is saying, is in the next, probably by 2022-23, we are looking at almost 90% of the jobs will require digital skills. Then if you look at 65% of the jobs in next 15 years no longer will stay. So there'll be a new kind of job that is required. So I think it's about the culture and the mindset change that is required within the organization. One is, it's not about headcount anymore, it's about skill count. So how do you upskill your talent that you have? And also people talk about war of talent. The war of talent doesn't exist. The talent have already won the war. So how do we make sure we retain those talent and upskill them to make them future fit? And that future fit is about, building the right level of empathy, right level of emotional intelligence and analytical and digital skills that is required to build the future of your business. Because it's no longer about transaction anymore. Transaction will be done by a very hybrid, I call it humbot operations, human and robotics, powered by artificial intelligence and machine learning. But it's the analytics layer on top, which will give you the customer insight, colleague insight, supplier insight, business insight. And that's what's going to drive your business forward. I think those are the skills, which are the skills of the future. And if there is one attribute that you need to have for the future is empathy and emotional intelligence.
Oh, thanks, Sumit. I think it makes certainly a lot of sense. And as before I move on, and I have a couple of questions at this point as well in terms of the employee side and the people side, but I'll come back to you. I know we have to trigger a poll, so can I request the backend to trigger a poll for all the audience? And I think even panelists can participate in that poll. So it will just take 30 seconds. Can we have a poll on the screen, please? So the question is, which according to you is the most critical indicator of the next normal? Weakening consumer loyalty, gig working, anywhere operations, tectonic shift to integrated technologies, global skill sourcing. And I'm sure there'll be many more, but I think this is a quick poll question to check the quick indicators. I think even panelists can give their responses. Just give another 15 seconds for the people to fill in. Okay, I think it was good. I'll just request the host to stop the poll, please. We'll take a question and then come back and publish the results. So just be ready with it. I just want to take a quick question forward and building it further with Alison. And I think there's a question even coming from the panelist as well, I can see. And I'll request panelists, if you have time, you can even respond in the chat box if you want to, because some questions are directed straight to you. But just building a question to you, Alison, and there was a couple of points which were discussed about this whole statistics, the predictive analytics. The whole financial model will have to be relooked. That's what there's a question all about, by saying, are we going to still continue with the same approach of predictive analytics and believe the outcome of predictive analytics, or we are going to say, okay, no, there'll be a lot of disruptions on the way, which is going to possible. So have this predictive analytics, but then plan your things, assuming some more disruptions on the way, and so on and so forth. And similarly, what kind of financial models, like looking at capex versus opex, do you think is something which going to be prevalent, the cost takeout? So just share a bit of thought in terms of financial models, as well as this whole connect to the predictive analyst, how much you should stick to this predictive analytics and believe it.
I think there's no question, the more agile you can be in your use of analytics and statistics, the better. Static forecasts are a thing of the past, I think. In terms of financial modeling and just thinking about financial management, I guess as a CFO, I don't think much has changed really in terms of some fundamental principles if you want to have a sound financial position as a company. If you're taking high risks from a financial perspective, whatever environment we're in, those risks will mean that your company is more susceptible to disruption and more susceptible in a financial way if something goes wrong. Our company isn't like that. We've always had a very strong balance sheet, but to cover the downside and make sure we've got protection for the downside. But on the other hand, we're also ensuring we've got lots of firepower and headroom to take advantage of situations where there are other companies that haven't got the same financial balance. So I guess what I would say is you really want to have best of both worlds if you can, to be able to take advantage of various opportunities as well as cover your risk.
Sure. No, I think it's a fair thought, and of course depends on the industry and the company to company and the market which you are operating. Yeah. So absolutely that has to be also kept in the mind. As we keep talking about, there's something called, we use a word or an acronym to say BIC to BIC from an SSF point of view, to say best in class to best in context. So you have to, of course, draw it from the industry, look at the predictive analytics, look at the plan, etc. And I think even plan and planning was a cautious word which was used by, I think, Sumit, by saying planning is important, as Amitabh was also talking about. So plan for it, but then plan for disruption as well. Just bake that disruption as part of it as you're building the plan. What I hear from you, I think Amitabh, a very quick comment, and I'm sorry about this. I think I have to be very, very quick, and it's absolutely from now onwards we'll have a rapid fires. So we'll have a 20 seconds kind of responses, 30-second responses, if you allow me to. But I also want to take some of the questions coming from the audiences as well. So Amitabh, there's a term home shoring. This is again nothing new as a concept. You work from home, and if you go to the North Americas or UKs, for decades people were working out of their home. There was nothing new about it, right? But when you look at from the context of this whole offshoring industry, sometime, leaders like you represent in a large numbers. Uh, the home shoring as a concept, how it is becoming, and there are a lot of conversation about it becoming a trend towards the next normal. And I'm talking about home shoring from an offshore point of view, not an onshore home shoring. So you move the work offshore, and in the offshore, I think in the pandemic, a lot of this home shoring was happening any which ways. We were pushed to do the work from home for a different reason altogether. Now, when this whole offshoring journey will continue for some of you as an organization, are you building a specific strategy to bake in what can be offshore, homeshore, and what could be offshore work from office? If I can use the word. So is that becoming a important strategy as part of you as an organization?
Absolutely, and we are looking into it. So, as we speak, 85,000 of Ericsson employees today are working from home, running networks, R&D, support function. So overall, migrating every function of the company to home. Of course, there are some that cannot work from home because it requires for certain business requirement to have a different kind of infrastructure. So they are coming, and we are trying to see in those areas as well if we can put some level of automation or technology that, so we can create that footprint which can work from home even bigger. So today we need at least 5% of our people to be in office, and we're trying to reduce that as well. So I think home shoring is easier for offshoring, because I believe when a customer mentally decide to move his or her job from to 5,000 kilometers, I think 5,004 or 4,090 wouldn't make any difference. So I think that's always an advantage for offshore operator. I think it's about mindset of people who are managing the workforce, how we deal with that. So I think that HR or the people function area is where we need to work more, and perhaps educating our line managers to embrace this as a change. I think that's the layer feeling a little uncomfortable, not the people who are working or not the people who are giving the work.
Interesting. Very, very, very well, very well put. I think it's a very good perspective. Can I request my backend to put all the panelists, 4 of us, on the screen, please, and also publish the poll result. Can you the poll results? Okay, that's interesting. So the result says that which according to you is the most critical indicator of the next normal. They're saying anywhere operations and tectonic shift to integrated technologies. I think we talked about anywhere operations just now, as Amitabh, we were talking about working from anywhere and home shoring, etc., the multiple operating models. And of course, looking at that shift to the integrated technology is one thing which is coming out to be views of the people who have participated. This skill sourcing is one area which is interesting one, and that is where I'll just take a very, very brief responses, please, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, like literally rapid fire, if you guys can support me on this. And I'm taking some questions from even the questions on the Q&A coming in from the audiences. This whole employee side, Sumit, the whole people side, as Amitabh was also alluding to, and you also talked about this empathy and this intelligence and how to look at it, humbot and so on and so forth. But we have been used to an environment. We have been used to an environment where you manage people, you build that culture, you shake hands on the ground, and there are people who are talking about how will you build that readiness in the minds of the people after this. Assume this pandemic is over in some point of time, and of course something else will happen, but how will you create that cultural shift to deal with that kind of a disruption in the future?
I think this is where leadership and line management capability will play a really, really big part. And how do you bring empathy, again, I talk about into your way of leadership. Now, I don't like the word offshoring, onshoring, homeshoring. I like hiring the right skills at the right time, at the right place, at the right cost. It could be anywhere. And building a global business services model, which is agnostic of location. You support a process, you deliver the process. Now, it's if the culture is strong within the organization, you can build those culture, and it's not people team or HR's job to build that culture. The culture sits with the leader in terms of how they build the leader, how they connect everyone in that organization to the purpose of the organization and the values of the organization. And I think I'll use this word of caution is that I don't think every single job in India or anywhere everything can work from home. So there are things that will require collaboration, requires agility, where you need to meet face to face, where you need to have whiteboard sessions, where you need to have process mapping or whatever you need to do, but be more agile. I think it's important that the flexibility is there so that you can come into office whenever you want to and work from home whenever you want to. But office is here to stay. It's not like 100% of the workforce will always work from home. It's not going to happen. If it happens, it's a big mistake.
Right. Thanks, Sumit. I think very quickly from you, Alison, you're talking about looking at the disruption what we have already gone through. There's a question more from one of the attendees is, what is the next disruption you visualize?
I don't visualize another global disruption anytime soon, hopefully, but I think there are definitely some trends or changes as a result of what we've all been going through that we've talked about today. Just building on Sumit's point, we are sociable animals. Human beings like to be sociable. So I think even if from a business perspective, we can work like this, work remotely, I think we do, well, most of us have an inherent need to socialize with other people face to face. So I think we'll end up certainly seeing, a change in how we operate. But I agree with Sumit. I don't see a world where we continue to work this way to the scale we are now when this is all over. This point around sustainability as well, I think that's going to be, that was a theme before this all happened. I think it's going to be a much, much bigger theme going forward, whichever industry you're in, whichever part of the world you're in.
Sure.
So yeah.
No, absolutely. I think a quick question from again an attendee, and this is for all the panelists. Maybe I'll just first throw it to Amitabh, you, and if somebody wants to please add. I think we just one more minute to go before we wrap the session. What's the panel's view on running huge transition programs during such pandemic? Are we just running regular operations or aim higher?
Well, it hasn't stopped us.
Go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, it hasn't stopped us continuing with our global rollout of a new ERP system. We've done it, we've done it remotely, and we've done it on time. So it's amazing how you can adapt if you need to.
And to me, I think it depends on the maturity of the organization, how matured you are and how ready you are as an organization to adopt and adapt change. I think that's, are you change ready? If you're not, then there is a problem.
Yeah.
Right. I think Amitabh, a quick question is in terms of, do you think this whole environment of, from an India context, working from home is going to continue for long, or is it like too early to talk about that everything will be working from home? Is it like a decision taken in haste, or people need to still plan for how to balance between WFO and WFH, if I can say?
Yeah, I think this is going to stay. Certain thing, make permanent, mark on the way we do things. I think this is one of those watershed moments. It was never tested, right? So now it got tested. I'm sure that this will not stay at a current level. There will be a hybrid model, and based on the business need, I think I meet a lot of young talent. I think they are more comfortable working from home. In my organization, I have seen globally that productivity has gone up. And one of the primary reasons we found that why the productivity is so up, because when we anticipated as management that it will go down, is because people have more time and flexibility. The travel time is definitely one of those, right? Even if you're working out of Gurgaon or Bangalore or places like that, you can easily waste 3 hours on traffic every day. People are more relaxed, and industry has been struggling with work-life balance thing. I think it addressed that. There will be a hybrid model, but we'll never go back to how it is to be.
Sure, absolutely. I think it was fantastic having the conversation with three of you, hearing different perspectives and insights, different industry. And as we believe, we don't converge to a conclusion. We, of course, have our own views to add to it. And as we always believe, it's contextual. It is up to the audience to take what they feel is good to take it back for their organization. There's some unanswered question. As we see, there are a lot of questions popping in. What we do is, we will take these questions. We'll try to see if we can get a post session responses and publish it on the Shared Services Forum portal for the people to come and gain more insights. Do feel free to reach out, all of you who have logged in with any questions further. We will ensure we find some opportunity to reach to the panelists and receive their insights on this as well. It was really, really wonderful. Thank you, each one of you, for taking your time out and joining this panel. We're going to have another interesting panel in next few seconds. Thank you, Alison, for taking time out and joining us an early morning for you. Thank you, Amitabh. Really, really appreciate taking time out from busy schedule and joining us and sharing your insights. And thank you, Sumit, for wonderful insights. I think a lot of questions for you. I think the people wants to talk to you more, Sumit. Maybe we will reach out to you with some questions for your responses separately.
Sure, no problem. Will be a pleasure. Thank you, Rakesh.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
So with this, the panel session 1 coming to the end, now we are moving to the panel session 2. And with this, I will request if we have Anand Maheshwari. Anand, if you are there already logged in.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear me, Rakesh?
I can hear you. I can't see you, Anand. Before I pass the baton, I want to see you.
I think they're enabling it.
But I think, Anand, as you were hearing, and I think your panelist coming and joining in, as you heard in the first panel, it was quite interesting conversation from a different industry and leaders' point of view. They were talking about disruption as usual, but at the same point of time, as you could hear, they have done a lot in the last 1 year and used this turbulence more still responding to this turbulence on some of those areas. And they have to make this, if I can use the word business as usual, is a journey. But that's what I think everybody is acknowledging, that everybody is really looking at it. A lot of learnings, and I think that's where we are. Good to see you, Anand. I think already your panelists are here, so I will hand it over to you, Anand, and take it from here. All the best. Thank you.
Thanks, Rakesh. And hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you are logging in from. At least I have the panel, which is truly global. So a very good morning to you, Sean. And good morning to you, Sajesh. And good afternoon, good evening to everyone else. So it's really a pleasure to be amongst the stalwarts of these key leaders representing a varied section of industry and the kind of experiences that they bring to the table. You would have read their introductions already, but as we go along, we will recap that in very brief words. Ours is supposed to be a fireside chat, which by very nature means that we will keep it a little light and informal. We have had some fantastic sessions, starting with Ravi's keynote address and the CXO's panel that Rakesh so ably facilitated just now. and we got a lot of nuggets of wisdom from them. The fireside chat I want to follow is a little bit more on the informal but not casual way. Okay, so let me just begin with a little bit personal experience to try and connect with the theme of this session, which says using turbulence to achieve escape velocity. Very interesting. In fact, in good old days, I used to enjoy air turbulence. I seriously, honestly make this statement that I actually enjoyed air turbulence. It gives that extra kick and fun while flying like a roller coaster. But then that stopped because I got married. Ever since then, I only pray when that turbulence happens and nothing else. And I know that at least 70-80% of my co-passengers would be in something similar mode, depending on the intensity of the turbulence and all that. But here we are talking of turbulence as a metaphor in a business context in the middle of an industry which has actually grown out of creating major turbulences themselves. So using turbulence is going to be definitely a new normal for us. Responding to, dealing with it, we have learned, we have heard, we have watched, we have witnessed, we have heard all the stories, how we have responded as an industry to that. So we have responded to the industry, to the turbulence. But is that good enough? Obviously not. The kind of next normal that we are kind of anticipating, many of us have better idea, many of us have not so good idea. Nobody can be perfect in estimating it, in visualizing it. But having responded to whatever we faced with in the last 1 year or so, now is the time to actually make most out of this crisis. As the famous saying of Sir Winston Churchill goes, that never let a crisis go west. So we will try and learn from the wisdom of all the fellow panelists on what next, how to deal with it. So I have got a few questions from my own side, and I would encourage all of the members of the audience to feel free and use the Q&A mechanism functionality of Zoom to pose whatever questions that come up to your mind. But I would take my own shot at it and turn to, guess who? I will start with ladies first. So Shalini, here is one for you. Of course, we belong to an industry which takes pride in being totally gender agnostic, but we are also part of a society where we follow certain cultural norms and ethos. So here it goes for you, Shalini. And importantly, you would have all noted that Shalini does not represent only as an organization. She is part of KPMG and all that you would have read. But more importantly, she deals with an important segment of the business that we are all part of, which is popularly currently known as GCCs, Global Capability Centers and all that. So from that perspective, my question to you, Shalini, would be that how has this particular segment, GCCs as a whole, have responded to the turbulence and moved beyond that? In fact, if I were to rephrase this question, many of the GCCs are already at a certain level of maturity. In fact, from my perspective, I was there 25 years ago when this all started, but the maximum GCCs would be probably 15 years, 18 years, 20 years old in their journey of this consolidation, transformation through global business services. So if we were to reimagine this entire concept in the light of today's norms, how would they have created the entire roadmap blueprint for the GCCs. Any thoughts?
Thank you, Anand, for the question, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm not sure going first is purely for the reasons you described. It's nice to get a chance to open this. And before I say anything else, a big thank you to the Shared Services Forum for the opportunity. Looking forward to this chat with the co-panelists here today. I must caveat by saying the term global capability centers, as we all have come to use it as a matter of convenience, this acronym, to be honest, I do believe there may be a problem with that term itself, because GCCs by definition, if viewed in that manner, tend to construe different implications of what a center could mean. You know, the whole concept of one sitting in a center has connotations of being remote. It tends to bring this perspective of onshore, offshore. And I do believe, if anything, in the last 10 months through the pandemic, this whole construct, or the way one is viewing it globally, the concept of a center is soon diminishing. Because what one is really seeing on the back of technology that has been at the core of driving changes through the pandemic, we have accelerated the journey for our business ecosystem to evolve and crunch timelines, where I know there are various reports that talk about it, to say crunch timelines by 5 years potentially, just in terms of technology adoption and embedding it into our ecosystem. So if you look at it from that perspective, and you look at the business value chain, the concept of a center really does not mean as much anymore. It's really about how seamlessly capability hubs across the globe are plugging in to deliver value by looking at an end-to-end value chain. So Anand, that would be my first opening comment, to say that I do believe that the definition of how one sees this and how one has seen from the old days, I was listening in on the previous panel, from what one started off with IT-enabled services to looking at where we've come on to, you know, many terms used, but I think increasingly we have truly blurred geographical boundaries. The current scalable hybrid virtual model is evidence of that. And of course, one has proven resilience with working in this environment over the last 10 months, most effectively and smoothly. So I do believe as a concept, I think that itself has changed. By definition, hence, when you look at end-to-end integration across platforms, across the value chain, the whole idea of work placement also has changed. So what one has seen, and India here on the back of some fantastic talent and leveraging that demographic dividend, has been able to really help organizations further invest into these technology hubs, into the digital hubs, as one may call it, which is then going across that value chain to drive some very, very transformational stuff. The days of talking of IT, finance, HR, the concept of back office, I think is behind us. It's kind of, some of that is a given. What we're talking about now is really impacting across that value chain, the front of the front office. How are you looking at truly making the most of this technology lever of using data as a pivot to impact end outcome for the business, the end customer experience? So one is has seen some very significant shifts, as you will hear some of our co-panelists, I'm sure, sharing their experiences, specific experiences. I think just the concept of the model has changed, and this model is evolving even faster. I'll spend just another 30 seconds to say that it's not just about these capability hubs. The vendor ecosystem is evolving. So there are very interesting hybrid models emerging. One has continued to see a flux between insourcing and outsourcing, where we are seeing, if someone had to set up a center in today's environment, you have the opportunity to do it very differently from how you would have done it even 5 years ago. You have the opportunity to leverage technology as a core, at the backbone, and leverage a very sophisticated vendor ecosystem, a startup ecosystem, to do things in a very, very different way. So with that, I will pause there. I will chime in with a few examples, but we're living in a very different world.
I'll come back to you, Shalini, certainly. And it was interesting to hear from you about the entire expanded form of GCC We recall vividly that the middle C, which for some time meant captive, was also not liked by many people, and then captive gave way to capabilities. Earlier, we used to call them global in-house centers, then all those things. So very interesting. We'll come back to you. We have this the important point associated with some of the comments being heard around this entire remote working and home working and whatnot, about the concept of data security, data privacy, and all that. And I will turn to you, Sajesh, for your perspectives on that front. You bring strong technology capabilities through UST and all that. And so how do you see this particular part? What has been your experience? Have there been any situations that we acted in? We might have, some people might have acted in haste and made a small little compromises here and there, but we haven't heard any big sort of disaster around that. So what has been your experience? How has been that response? And how do you see going forward?
Yeah, so, see, I think first of all, thank you so much for having the opportunity to be here with this esteemed panel. And in fact, it was a great to hear Ravi talk about some of the, the thinking around how this whole thing is evolving, and the previous panel as well. And in fact, this is a conversation, Deepak, we talked about it yesterday as well. The point is, yes, data security is important, but the organizations have evolved quite well during this pandemic, right? So there are technology advancements there where you can actually look at, you can do a lot of remote working kind of procedures can be established. So technology has really helped in achieving those kind of objectives on remote working environments. And many organizations, so even if you look at UST ourselves, right, we went through a pseudo pandemic during, if you look at it, we have a major operations in Kerala, in southern India, and we had floods 2 years back before this pandemic hit, right? And we have to evolve our thinking around what could have happened in a remote working scenario, because there is no choice. I mean, it's floods, and we have to take care of that. And that helped us to evolve our business to think about what does it mean that if another pandemic hits, what do you need to do? And that has really helped us to establish remote working environment in a very, very short amount of time. In fact, we were up and running in 48 hours, which was, everybody thought, okay, you're just joking. But it is quite possible. And more importantly, if you look at part of the problem before this pandemic was, while that data security and all those elements were there, many organizations was looking at it from a paper standpoint, right? They were not really practically thinking about it. And what this pandemic has done is, it is like, adversity is the mother of invention. People have no choice but to think about whether it's really true or not. And a lot of the DR processes, a lot of the business continuity processes started stress testing, right? And that's when a lot of the technology investments that has gone in has really helped organizations to shape and even take, say, for example, Deepak, we were talking yesterday about there are capabilities like you can scan emails, you can pretty much protect your data far better in a remote environment nowadays with the help of technology. And people have started using that quite effectively, right? Earlier, it was more kind of pilots going on because, there was no need for it. And there was less of an importance given to those points. Now, what this has done is actually it is giving more focus around that. And it will continue to stay, right? That is the beauty of this, that it has accelerated some of these focus around data security and other elements, and it became more live as opposed to be on a paper. So that's how I see it. So definitely technology existed, but it is now becoming practical in my view.
Deepak, you want to add something to that? I know that you have some views.
See, I think one of the key things is technology was always there, and I think we were planning. I mean, the disruption in the technology space was going on. It didn't stop. I think there was a lot of curiosity, a lot of new ideas, a lot of new tools and techniques that came up over the last 5-7 years. And I think the GICs or GCCs, whichever name you call them with, have been using that. But I think one of the things that has happened now is the acceleration. What has happened now is that we have suddenly started realizing the importance of all of these tools and accelerated our journey of adoption. So if you really talk about it, 5 years ago, we had all these tools, the e-invoicing was there, the OCRs were there, all technologies were pretty much prevalent, and the adoption levels were at 20, 30, 40%. One disruption like the pandemic suddenly takes your adoption level from 20% to an 85, 90%. And all of this happens in a short period of 2 to 3 months because, as Shajesh pointed out, necessity the mother of all invention. You don't have an alternate mechanism to get yourself paid. So all the resistance that was there just faded away. I think one of the key things that this pandemic has taught us is that it's not about building something new. I think it's a human quest, always goes on, keeps on discovering new things. And as a human species, we keep on, our curiosity doesn't allow us to, reduce our effort on any of these areas. We constantly try to innovate, constantly try to find out new things. But a situation like pandemic suddenly brings a point of inflection in our adoption and in our approach towards this entire thing. I think the agility with which all of us responded to it. First of all, we responded to it because we wanted to stay, we wanted to survive. Otherwise, the business as usual won't work. So all of that, say for example, in our case, we are a financial services company. Most of the trade deals that happen with us is electronic, and trading needs to happen from our centers. Barring some of those things which are statutory or regulatory in perspective, everybody found out a mechanism of working from home, and all of these operations were set up within 48 hours. I mean, I could never imagine 2 years ago that we are shifting desktops home.
Yeah.
No, it was a big no-no. Can you imagine somebody taking an asset like a desktop home and still be able to connect things, connect to the servers, connect to all the places, and very easily work on it, and no incidents, not a single incidence of data storage, data leakage, or any other sort of data privacy issue? How did we manage all of this? I think all of this happened because we were forced to do it. And that's the distinction that I want to draw between disruptions that have been happening voluntarily or in controlled environment or through our own phases of discovery. And the second is, this is a disruption that was forced upon us and we reacted differently. I think this is past us now. I need to look at this again goes back to the main topic of this discussion, that we've created some sort of velocity. Whether it's good enough as escape velocity or not, we are not sure at this point of time. But definitely there is a velocity, there is a momentum that has been created. It is now time to look forward as to what we do with all of this that has happened and how do we use this for the future. I think that's the question.
Yeah, so we'll come back to that on how to accelerate this velocity and momentum to really reach that escape level and not remain content with what we have, how we have responded, or how we. I will now turn to Sean, who has joined us all the way from Dallas, early morning time. Sean, we are really thankful to you. And you had this situation in the middle of various other things which were not short of any turbulence by itself, and then this whole thing hit. So how did you manage it, and what are your key messages for going forward?
Yes, can you hear me okay, Anand?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, or thanks for having me and the rest of the panelists. It's really, really interesting discussion. First of all, I work for Alcon, so global leader in eye care, and we had a spinoff from Novartis in 2019. But 2020 was really targeted as our major effort to separate from the company. So and what that means is we spent about 7, 8 years integrating into Novartis, and we had 2 years to separate from Novartis. And this is global network infrastructure systems, ERP, everything. So we had a pretty heavy mandate in 2020 to actually execute this worldwide. Not to mention we had to set up a new IT organization, new service centers as well, everything from scratch. And so we had an aggressive agenda, but then the pandemic hit. And during our agenda for 2020 was also to shift our sourcing model. And I really appreciate what Shalini had said about the definition of a service center. When we sat back as a new company and a global company, about $7 billion company, we said, what do we want our service centers to be? So we had the opportunity to rethink. And we went down the path of what Shalini was saying, where the service centers are actually another delivery arm as part of our global team. We don't look to them as a separate unit that is independent and delivers services independently. They're really part of our global team. And that was a very, very strategic move. As you know, we could have gone a lot of different ways with that and just created services and such, but we said no. For instance, IT, my department is responsible for global services, and the individuals in the service center are just part of the team, part of that global team. And we also said we're going to make a shift. So under our prior company, under Novartis, we were about, I would say, 70 to 80% outsourced, particularly with technology, the technical competence and expertise. In 2020, we targeted, let's make that shift. Let's shift to a model that we're about 20 to 30% outsourced. And the majority of our technical know-how will be built up in the delivery centers, particularly the one in India. So we had a massive recruiting effort also taking place in 2020. The pandemic hit, and we had to say, what do we do now? Do we sit back and put these on hold and continue on with our vendors? And our new team in India and our leaders there with the delivery centers said, no, we can push on. So like some of you said, we're going to take advantage now of the situation and push on. So we did, and we had a very successful hiring thanks to the teams, our leaders in India, hiring of and we hit our recruiting targets. And I'm really, really proud to say that the feedback I got from the individuals that were hired are that it was some of the best onboarding experience they've ever had with any company. And I think it's attributed to rethinking. We had to think about how do we engage this new talent coming in? How do we engage them and make them part of that team? And I remember some of our leaders in the company said, the pandemic has actually led to a flattening of the organization, not the org chart, but the organization and the ability for anybody to talk to anybody at any time, no matter where you are in the organization. And I see that reflected in the new individuals hired on, where I've had conversations with them personally. I said, hey, just ping me now on our new platforms on Teams, and I'll get on a WebEx with you, and we'll have a chat. Whereas historically it would have been wait for me to take the trip to India, and then we'll have that conversation. So it's really flattened the organization. So we hit the hiring goals and such, and we also took the opportunity, like you had said, Anand, to deploy technology even faster. And whereas we could have said, oh my God, how are we going to get this done? Because we can't go face to face with our global partners around the world to deploy SAP, to deploy new laptops to 20-some thousand associates. We said, no, we're going to do it remotely. And we actually exceeded our schedule in doing that because we took advantage of the opportunity. And in doing that, and not even thinking about this, we built credibility with the rest of the business, this new business, on what IT can do, and also what can we do working together. I didn't mention also, we started a business transformation at the same time as well, internally. So multiple factors going on. And part of that business transformation was a digital transformation. So now we have a new team, global, and our service centers are part of that team. And we said, we're building an Asia-based digital solution. And what do? Typically, when you do an agile team, the agile team all works together. We can't work together. We can't be sitting face-to-face at an agile scrum table. And so we broke the agile models and said, we're going to have a global agile team that's spread across 5 continents. And we actually built the product, and the majority of the delivery was out of our brand new service team in India. And we delivered that product on time, actually a little bit ahead of time, at remarkable speed with the combination of internal and external staff, which we would have never been able, I don't think we've been able to do it before. So we built the confidence also to move on. So it's a few factors where we've really leveraged to not only transform the business, transform the relationship, flatten the organization, but also set us up for what's new. We've built the eagerness to say, oh my gosh, we could do this. What else can we do now? As working as one global team, tightly integrated with the business.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. It's so reassuring to hear those thoughts and your experiences, which came all in the middle of multiple things happening, as you rightly pointed out, and also heartening to note that this has really worked for you, including the India experience. Coming to India and turning now to Samba, one of the elements of the new normal that we often read about, and sometimes even experience, is that the fast depleting consumer loyalties. The consumer had never had it so good in terms of the choices and the ease with which he or she can shift amongst those choices. In that backdrop, how did your organization, that is Tata Sky, deal with the turbulence, and how do you propose to move forward from here? Some key nuggets from you, please.
Yeah. Thanks, Anand, and thanks again for inviting me as part of this forum. Actually, I feel that all the important topics, I think, has been covered between Shalini and Sajesh and Sean and also Deepak. So it's good. So what I can spend the next, say, maybe 3-4 minutes is on Tata Sky. Is, as most of you may be knowing, it's a DTH company. We have been in existence for about 15 years now. And we are highly a customer focused company, which I think people know. So our main objective when pandemic struck was to make sure that there is no customer disruption. While disruption within the organization is acceptable, for us, it was not acceptable to have a disruption in services to the customer. So that is what all our energies were focused on. Around March 15th, we had a session internally to see that, okay, if there is a lockdown, what would we do? So that was something, great foresight of our managing director, Harit Nagpal. So we were kind of prepared when the actual lockdown announcement was made around, I think, 23rd or 24th of March. And we had prepared a plan as to what we said as a contingency plan, as to who are the people who are going to work in the office, how many people will be there, which office, how do we make arrangement for their stay, so that all the customer impacting work, for example, the technology team, where the network operations center was working, the IT team, where these are critical services, we wanted it to be clear that there is no disruption from the customer point of view. So that is point number one. So to that extent, we were kind of prepared. So when the actual lockdown announcement came at 8 o'clock or 8:30 the previous evening, saying that from tomorrow, it will be a national lockdown, we had to just activate that particular plan, so to say. And second point I would like to mention is that this actually helped us, this pandemic actually helped us to test our digital transformation journey, what the company was going through over the last 7 years. So we had started this transformation journey about in 2013-14, where we were trying to move a lot of things into digital mode, and one by one, a lot of small things from the customer perspective, from the finance perspective, from sales perspective, lots of, I'm not getting into the details, but we were doing a lot of projects, so to say. So all these things came into fruition. I'll just touch upon one particular example. When we started, at least when I started in the company in 2013, the customers used to make payments for their recharges. And about, I think 20 to 25% of the payments were coming through what we call as the online mode. The remaining 75% was offline. After demonetization, this went up to 40% because immediately on demonetization, the cash crunch happened and people started moving into online. It moved to 40%. And it was slowly hovering around 50% around March 2020. So immediately after lockdown, when people could not go out, how do they watch television sitting at home? If they don't have an opportunity to go out, they had to adopt to online mechanism. So we reached around 80% from 50% within a span of a couple of weeks. So that puts a lot of pressure on the system, process, everything, right? You have not seen that kind of a volume growth for the backend system to really see whether it works. There is a 60% increase in volume overnight, 50 to 80, right? So that is something which, so that's why I was saying that whatever automation we had done, it was a kind of a test which was done, which was this pandemic. And I thought that we came out with a reasonable kind of success out of this pandemic. And the second point where we were not so successful is around the what we call as the management of the outsourced agencies. Most of our call centers, like this is we have a few million customers, and there are a few call centers through outsourced agencies where the customers can make the calls and we make the calls to the customers on a daily basis. We are talking about more than a few lakhs of calls every single day. So those people, they need to also be fully automated. That part we were not so ready. So it took a while for us, maybe I think 2 weeks or 3 weeks for us to get the operating centers ready. So to that extent, we were negatively impacted by pandemic, because when the customers were making the calls and the call centers were non-operational because of the lockdown, there was nobody to pick up the call. So naturally, our abandoned call rate went up to as high as say 70, 75%, when our norm was 2%. Our norm was 2%, whereas it reached 75% overnight. Like that 50% went to 80%, this abandoned call also went up overnight, right? So that we had to bring it down. It took us maybe a couple of months to bring back to the normal level. So there we had a big challenge. So that is something which we were kind of not prepared for. So we had a success story where we had a learning as well. So with these 2 points, I will kind of stop.
No. I would say that the learning story is equally, if not more powerful.
Yeah.
That you very well anticipated a few things, planned around that, and executed that plan. But your partner system or your ecosystem could not deal with that influx of those incremental calls immediately, and that took some time. So these are all, this is a very important sharing of so-called learning also.
Yeah.
But great to hear from you, Samba. And there is a question from an audience. You may like to have a look at it, and time permitting, we'll come back to it. Otherwise, we can even respond.
Thank you.
I will turn again to Shalini on an important point that you made about some interesting operating models emerging, balancing between insourcing, outsourcing, carve out, and all that. Maybe you may want to elaborate some of that in a GCC context, and it will be useful if you can also contextualize it in terms of whether we are talking of the very matured kind of GCCs, the larger ones with the, when I say large ones means upward of 1,000 headcount in that offshore model, or there are many of them which are much smaller. So how has been your experience on that side of the spectrum, and how are they responding, and what is you see that they are using the turbulence to a new normal for themselves, which is the best for them in the next year or two?
Sure, Anand. I'll try and kind of give maybe through a few examples. But when we look at, like I said, in the last 10 months, if I just look at conversations we've been having, the number of conversations with the global onshore teams has just been much more frequent and significant, whereas as everyone's kind of stepping back to look at their service delivery model to figure out whether it is really fit for purpose. When I say that, I mean it's parallel to all of the wider organization-wide transformation, the digitalization program that organizations have been in that journey for a few years. Like we've all said, the pandemic kind of accelerated a few things, but it's been a good time to step back and take stock. For some sectors that was specifically reeling under the pressure of how the pandemic hit their core business, costs and optimization became quite the need of the hour, and hence the need to really look at whether the model today stacks up in the context of all of that. And a lot of organizations have done this differently. And if I call out a few examples of things we've been seeing, one is, for example, on the back of the cost pressure, the opportunity to step back and figure which of your processes are absolutely core and do you want to keep within, and are there some areas which are not as core to you, which you believe there is a service provider who can do it for you in a much more effective manner. So we've seen the whole managed services model come back into the forefront. I'm sure you've seen some large deals that have been announced on the back of carve-outs and acquisitions that the big tech players have made, taking over the entire IT infrastructure, device management, applications management. So there is some of that. And to that extent, there clearly has been an opportunity to review your vendor landscape and outsourcing opportunity. That's one example of what we're seeing. At another level, those that have been a little more mature on their digitalization journey have also seen the opportunity to now actually bring a few things back in-house, because what was outsourced 5-10 years ago, today the environment in which you can operate those same processes, where you're leveraging a tech platform, allows you to actually bring that back in-house, and hence address a bunch of other risks potentially that the regulatory environment poses. And there have also been a whole bunch of insourcing deals that we're seeing. The interesting part is insourcing deals doesn't anymore mean headcount moving from vendor back in-house, but like I said, the very nature and model in which those processes are being done are very different, and that's the trigger for some of that insourcing. So that could be a second example that I'd like to call out. The third example that comes to mind when you look at these operating models is also how you are leveraging the vendor ecosystem from a startup perspective. Again, accelerators, incubators mushroomed all over the place. To be honest, one needs to look at it closely to see how many of those were truly effective in terms of outcomes that they got to, how successful and sustainable were those cohorts and some of those accelerator programs. But the fact is that now we're seeing some of the GCCs actually use partners in the startup world to build some very innovative platforms, to really change the way of working, to change the models of working. And hence I go back to the point to say that, when you look at the world today, we're working with a few organizations who are going through a very interesting exercise, which they call a zero waste exercise, to say, we may have been in this business and may have had a center operational for the last 10-15 years. But why don't we step back and look at, if we had to set up shop today and set this model up today, how different would that look? And honestly, I think that's a great exercise to go through, because the world around you has changed. Not just what technology allows you, but what the vendor and the wider ecosystem allows you. So it's a fantastic opportunity to step back and reflect on how would you do things differently. We've known of organizations who've been in the country for a long time with 15,000-20,000 people in some sense through the vendor network, through outsourced models, who are now coming in and saying, we want to set up our own center, but guess what? We're going to do it very differently. Here's what our center is going to do. I'm going to create a digital hub. I'm going to set up an innovation hub. These are the 3 or 4 things that my center will do while I continue to use the vendor model for all else. So there are a whole host of interesting models emerging, Anand, on the back of some of these dynamics, and hence a great time to step back and look at, if you did things today afresh, how would you do that very differently? Because there are some really new, interesting ideas and models there.
Thank you, Shalini. That's much helpful. Before I move on, there is a poll coming up. I would request the host to put up the poll here and request everyone, including a panelist and the audience, to try and respond to the most important ingredient required to build a healthy, anti-fragile organization for the future would be. "15 seconds more, please. Kindly submit your choice. All are nice descriptions, good choices. Which appeals to you most? Please pick that up. Okay. We can close the poll, please. And I would come back with the poll results after the next question, which is for Sajesh. Sajesh, as we have already heard, and Shalini also touched upon it, it is not necessarily about just one company, how it responds to a particular situation and creates opportunity out of it. It is about the whole ecosystem. And how do you see that the entire ecosystem that we operate in is gearing up to attain that kind of escape velocity going forward when it comes to digital transformation? Is it how comprehensive you can make it, and how much outcome focused that entire program you can make out of it? What's your sense? What are your experiences around?
Yeah, so so again, I think Shalini touched upon it earlier. So if I look at it, we are focused on intelligent automation, and it is becoming a very hot topic and a key pillar for digital transformation, right, across the board. But if you take a step back, the natural tendency would be to say that, look, there is advancement in technology. You have the best artificial intelligence, machine learning, NLP technologies, etc. deliver. But what is shaping this ecosystem and is, if you look at, if I take a step back and think about what happened during the pandemic, okay, even though these technologies existed, one big shift is happening is the collaboration between business and technology groups have been, it's one of the best so far during the pandemic, right? Because earlier, when we used to go to a business leader, the natural tendency was, oh, it is technology piece, you can talk to our technology teams. But today, that is not the case. They will say, no, I want to hear what you're going to do, because it is impacting business operation day to day, and I need to be involved on a day-to-day basis, right? So that's a big shift. That collaboration has really shifted the thinking. And what do you call it, a side effect of that, or a positive side effect of that, is what people realize is, in order to drive value faster, you need to have an ecosystem. So that word itself started thinking about, because you can't invent at the pace that you needed to invent today with just having a few people within your own team thinking about it, right? So that is definitely has opened up doors of possibilities. People are more receptive to ideas. People are receptive to startups than ever before, and that is happening quite rapidly, because because that collaboration is actually driving, saying that why can't we do it within a month? Why can't So Shalini mentioned about it earlier, right? The entire digital transformation ask has transformed from 5 years to 1 year, and that is also because, and again, we need to understand the why, right? So if you look at, earlier Sumit was talking about, if you look at retail, online grocery shopping used to exist, but that would have been maybe 5% of your business or 10% of the business. Suddenly it became 40% of your business. So you need to change. And in fact, Samba was saying earlier, suddenly everybody is reaching out in a digital way. You suddenly became 50%, became 80%, right? From a digital adoption. So you need to change at a very, very rapid pace. And that requires an ecosystem to come together very rapidly, right? That was one important thing. The second thing that we started seeing a shift, which is again enabling that ecosystem, is to look at value creation as the paramount, as opposed to getting hung up on technology itself, right? So people started looking at more kind of that value creation in a more holistic fashion. So that is what is enabling to think about, I don't need to build everything myself. I can bridge the gap with a compelling technology to enable me to act faster, right? So that's why a lot of those technology adoptions you see, and we are seeing that intelligent automation pieces, right? One of the big ask from our side was not about individual components. It was about an intelligent orchestration of those components, right? That became the major shift, right? Because intelligent components existed, but how do you weave that together? And that's where we need to get collaboration and bring a lot of the other technologies also in play. And that's how we see the shift happening. And one more point to extend to what Shalini was saying from a GCC standpoint. What we are seeing is, historically, people will use it, okay, you know what, let's drive labor arbitrage, let's look at more efficiency, and then we will think about technology. Now that is shifting. People are looking at, because the data is available, the digital ways of working is available, they are thinking about process reengineering and automation, then looking at kind of outsourcing and things like that. So what is important to understand for again, business partners who are in this call, and the audience who are managing GCCs or looking at GCCs, is a lot of the strategic work that used to happen at the mothership is slowly shifting towards the GCCs, right? So the talents upskilling become much more, so you are working on much more, what is called as a higher value activities, more and more. And that requires this upskilling of talents. And that also creates a lot of new possibilities for all the talent that is there. So that's something to think about. And that's how we see that evolution.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sajesh. You made some very compelling points. Before I turn back to you, Sean, let me check if we have the poll results handy. There they come. Okay. I'm sure you can all read it. Creating an environment to allow free imagination takes the cake here. But other than that, I think people have given good spread of importance to other factors as well. A robust intelligent automation infrastructure is another big factor. So thank you very much. This was an interesting insight from an overall audience point of view. So Sean, you heard a lot of things coming from Sajesh in terms of how the GCCs in particular have need to respond and create an ecosystem around that. What has been your experience, and more importantly, what are your plans to accelerate this digital transformation to reach those escape velocity levels?
Yes.
And please be brief. We have just about 5 minutes.
Okay, well, I love the poll because the imagination thing is key for me. What I love about what happened last year is it really changed the risk posture of the company and risk posture of individuals. And what we are doing is enabling that imagination thinking. We've actually put objectives in individuals' personal objectives last year that they have to basically go out and learn new technologies and do that on their own even, and explore, and then take that and leverage it in the enterprise. I'm amazed on how difficult it is to change that culture. Okay, so we really, really have to press in on it, that it's okay. It's okay to take that risk now. And we want you to take that risk. We want you to learn new, and we want you to implement in the environment. If you fail, it's okay. We'll learn from that and then continue to move on. That's a big one for us. I want to be brief and turn it back to you, but I think that's, I can speak more about our plans, but I want to allow time for others.
No. We will come back to you for one more, probably one last question, either from the audience. But I want to turn to you, Deepak, again. You have a fantastic view, not only at the global GCC levels, that is scale, but also very much large Indian corporations, how they have leveraged this entire global process consolidation mechanism. And so given that kind of depth of your experiences, width of your experiences, both, how would you visualize some of the stuff coming forward to us in terms of people behavior and leadership behavior to achieve that escape velocity in the field of business services?
I think it's a great question, Anand. Two things I want to just, I'll just make my point with two examples. Somewhere around 2018-19, when the rest of the world was going towards consolidation of operations, my current organization, Edelweiss, hired me to really break open an existing shared services and give it back to various organizations. So we were a large group shared service center. And in 2018, we started a journey to make it smaller, faster in terms of being more agile and more technology oriented, and then enable each of the businesses to run it themselves rather than a large corporate organization running it. It had many more strategic requirements, so to speak, the regulatory part of it, and also the corporate structure that we were trying to get into, and also the cost of, where do we want to keep our capital? As a holding company, do you want to invest in a shared services organization, or you want to keep investing in assets that pay you back? As a financial services organization, these were some of the bigger questions that were there in front. So one of the biggest asks was to really start this process. From a leadership perspective, I think it was important for a leader to have a view about what they want to do with their GBS organization. And that's very important, because that's the that's the crux in which, that's the backbone of all operations, because whether it's custodial operations, or whether it is broking operations, or whether it is your banking operations, or whether it's loans, mortgages, I think everything culminated into a shared services organization. So I think that was a very important call that the company took, and it was a very strategic call that the company took. But having taken that call, I think we had, what was happening was, while we were planning this journey of the technological changes, I think this came like a bolt from the blue. We were not planning a pandemic.
No one was.
So we did not know how to react, whether we really continue with our journey. Last January, we were having a very important discussion. Should we continue our journey, or should we start looking at BAU? I think BAU took more, precedence over our journey in transformation. But it was not more than a month and a half before which we said we will be back into our fold. And then exactly that's what was important for us to get. We were able to kickstart all our projects again. And I'm telling you, this is almost like 8 to 9 months after when we started out the projects. Today, we have absolutely taken away all our processes, put into the new technology, and handed them back to our businesses.
Wonderful.
We have sort of had a reversal of sorts as far as our technology. So instead of one large center, we have created centers of excellence, layered with great deal of technology and customer right in. So this is not a back office anymore. The front office and the back office the lines between the front office and the back office is blurred for us.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the most important thing that has happened here, and it's a different kind of a transformation altogether.
Absolutely.
How did pandemic help us in this entire thing was that acceleration was the key here. It first stopped us, but then at the same time, it also made sure that once we have started the journey, we couldn't see back. There was no point in going back to where we were. We said, right or wrong, failure or success, we don't know. You know, we will fail maybe. At the most, what will happen? We'll fail. But we'll keep our plan B, but we'll move forward with our plan A. And that's what we achieved. You know, by end of the last year, we were able to close out on all the projects.
Yeah, that's what I believe. The literal meaning of velocity is speed with direction. So the direction has to be there along with the speed. And wonderful to hear from that experience. Let me turn this slightly differently. This pandemic is not the only turbulence that many of us would have faced, as you have also rightly pointed out. And Samba, you are in the middle of your business is in the middle of something where OTT over the top is coming, and it's gaining a lot more traction in the marketplace. Maybe starting on a small base, and many other interesting things happening. So, how are you gearing up for this part of the future? You narrated very beautifully what you planned in March of 2020 that you could put in place within hours of the need arising. But what next?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. Actually, this OTT specifically is a big threat for us. There is no doubt about it in the long term. But not we don't see it as a threat, because OTT has been here for the last, say, 3-4 years. Post COVID, it has actually taken off very, very fast. We have seen a lot of what you can say Amazon Primes and Netflix and all the OTT players doing phenomenal amount of viewership and subscription. Fortunately for us, this increase in the OTT viewership is not seen along with the decrease in the television viewership.
Okay.
So fortunately is what I would say. So as we see in the last, say, 9 months, we have not seen a big decline or anything, even a small decline we have not seen, because what we believe is happening is that people are using OTT as an and, barring a very few dash one, what you can say, the very city goers where it's highly people like us, we used to say, where we do the cord cutting. It's a technical term. What we say is cord cutting means that people move to OTT and cut the cord for DTH, basically. But that is not happening, unlike in Western, because the economics don't support that. In the Western world, by cutting the cord, you save a lot of money, at least $40-50 you save every month by cutting the cord. But here, by cutting the cord, you will save maybe $2-3. So it doesn't make sense for people to cut the cord. And the cost of OTT is anywhere around $10 to $12. So it's actually, the equation is the other way around, where OTT is actually more expensive than DTH, which is a phenomenon, which is the reason why it is an and. So therefore, we are not seeing a big, and we are also playing in a small way with binge plus kind of products. And it is expected to grow well. As of now, we are seeing some good traction on that as well. With that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thanks. And I personally feel that cost is only one element, but the content will ultimately decide where the viewership will finally veer around to. So I'm sure your own system, ecosystem behind you has to respond faster to it for people like you to stay afloat and thrive. Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, more or less, we are covered our time. I wish we could continue this fantastic exchange of ideas, thoughts, learnings, experiences, crystal ball gazing into the future a little bit, although that's very, very risky, but still it's interesting. So thank you very, very much for being with us. There may be still 1 or 2 questions that we could not take up. You may kindly respond to those if they have been addressed to anyone individually. And I would request you all to stay behind for few minutes more, that this evening is going to witness a very, very important part of Shared Services Forum's annual conclave. That is recognition, felicitation, and award presentation. It will take just about 10 to 15 minutes more. So kindly stay on. Same request to all the audience. And thank you very, very much. It has been a very productive, very stimulating, thought-provoking, and hopefully a lot of takeaways, outcome-focused discussions that we have had. So with that, I give it back to Rakesh. Are you there? Yeah. Back to Rakesh.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, each one of you. And thanks, Anand, for moderating this panel. That was very insightful to listen to all the panelists. I think the varied experience and the range of experience, which was quite evident as they were sharing their experiences, either be a technology or talking from the GCC and the redefinitions, etc. So it was very powerful. As we progress now, we move on to the very interesting agenda of the entire conclave. There are, as you know, there are 2 days, or both the days, we are going to have some announcements of the Excellence Awards and recognition. This is the 10th year of the Excellence Awards and recognition. And to begin with even the proceedings, I am very excited to have with me today the jury chair, Mr. V.V. Ranganathan, who is a former senior partner EY, chairman Composites Ventures Inc. And he's a well-known name, and of course his profile is all across the portal, and then it has all the audience have received as a part of the circulation, the entire profile. And Ranga has been, as is fondly called, one of the major backbone for the shared services forums, the Excellence Awards and recognition, the kind of guidance. And sometimes he says he also gives plaques, which is real. But I think we learn from each of those incidents and opportunity. I think a lot of interesting learnings I have got from Sir Yu, and there's a lot more to go through the process and the journey. I'm sure over the next few years we'll have more to learn. So I warmly welcome you to be part of this important agenda and the session on Excellence Awards and recognition, and request you, sir, to please share briefly about the process. Of course, this time the process become more virtual, with you being in down south India, and one of the interactions I can never forget, where you were having the baras with your chai, and we were trying to have a very serious conversations, and you were having, so the virtual life also brought some excitement to the conversation. So over to you, sir, to hear some thoughts from you and how this whole process for this year was done.
Thank you, Rakesh, and I must say good evening to every one of you who is participating in this 10th annual Global Business Services Conclave from the Shared Services Forum, India. I'm happy to be present here. I have been associated with SSF, as Rakesh has said, from as old as Adam, because since the very beginning, I should say. So I've been an ugly face for the last more than 10 years, I should say. This is the 10th year, but then when we were preparing for the awards, there were a lot of preparatory work that was going on. Well, I think it's a matter of pride for the founders of Shared Services Forum under the leadership of Mr. Ravi Ramakrishnan, and ably engineered by Rakesh Sinha and his team over the last many years. They have, without a break, with great dedication and focus, have continued to serve the Shared Services Forum in India and overseas. The theme for this 2-day conclave, which is achieving escape velocity during times of unprecedented turbulence, speaks for itself the predicament in which we are all around the world. Innovation, I think, is under great threat as well as a challenge. Given the responsibility for human lives, we have to deftly balance the opportunities for severe disruptions, technology enabled that they are, with a sense of social responsibility as well, if not able to generate more jobs for the millions of youth in this country, but to be careful in dramatically reducing or evaporating existing jobs. The leaders in this industry, I must say with a great sense of relief, have adhered to the call of an inner conscience to create more jobs so that more mouths can be fed. I would like to leave that thought as you are all trying to create an escape velocity and then get into the next altitude and orbit. But then let's also remember that there are so many other lives here on this planet that we need to take care of. So as chairman of the jury with my co-judges, Ram and Chandru, we have gone through the wealth of data compiled by Rakesh and Pallavi of SSF. When we look at the size of some of these business entities and the jobs that they have created, it's gratifying that the leaders of the businesses have a heart too. We have studied the impressive and impactful metrics of business entities and their leaders who are competing today for this prestigious award. I must say that over the period of time, there has been several calibrations of the matrices themselves that they have added. SSF, I should say, have been able to calibrate these several important measures that matter in various business entities. And in that regard, many businesses have introduced new critical measures to keep their score and change the dashboard itself. That itself is a great measure because when we were receiving these several inputs for the competition, there were measures that were not being captured. They were not being looked at all. So I think shared services have been able to introduce those measures into these businesses to say, hey guys, we got to look at these things as well. So they have been able to calibrate and then refine their dashboards to that extent. So we have been able to exercise our judgment based on concrete data and data alone, nothing else. And the data have been fairly robust and thus are able to announce the winners in various categories, which will be announced today and tomorrow. I take this opportunity to thank the team at Shared Services Forum, as well as my co-judges for being able to finalize the list of winners for this year. Thank you, Rakesh, over to you.
Thank you, sir, for that kind words and also the kind of review process we have gone through. And of course, I also take this opportunity to extend my sincere thanks to the other two jury members, Mr. Ram Ramasundar and Mr. T. Chandrasekhar, for enabling this process. And not taking much time ahead, I know there are people who have joined in and they're waiting for hearing the winners and the names of the winners.
They've had a long day, yes.
So we will quickly move on to announcing few of them today, and then as we rightly said, we will have few tomorrow to be announced tomorrow into the day. So we'll have the first couple of awards as a company awards, and I'll request the backend to put the first category slide up on the screen, please. I'll request, sorry, if you can do the honors and announce the winner.
Yeah, this is the category, as you can see on the screen. It's Excellence in Business Services, India Servicing. So the winner, we had number of finalists in this who are all really substantially up for grabbing this award. But I think a slight edge was there for Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages,
So the winner in this award is Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages.
So warm congratulations to Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages. I think fantastic job. Just a quick bit about Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages. They are about a 900 people strong organization. Multifunction, they have F&A, HR, supply chain, sales operations, commercials, etc. They do service pan-India operations as well as few countries outside, but their primary focus is India and Indian subcontinent. Do we have any video message from Hindustan Coca-Cola? Can this backend play it? It's getting stuck. Can you just repeat it, please? I think we're not able to hear the audio. Certainly, I can see Tanmay's video.
So thank you, Shared Services Forum. Thank you, Ravi, Rakesh, Sanjay, and the entire Shared Services Forum team. I think you are all doing a truly pioneering work in bringing this community of practitioners together through this forum. And every time that we've been part of this forum, we've come out learning something new and different. Thank you, jury, for recognizing us. And it's a testimony to the fact that we've been doing some outstanding work. 2020 has not been a great year in many aspects and not been an easy year in many aspects. In spite of that, I'm grateful that the team behind me, which is Tara, Monica, Kashyap, Mihir, Rahul, and the entire shared services team that we lead has really emerged stronger and worked on a host of initiatives.
We're losing the video. If you can just check that, I think we're losing the video.
Thank you, team, and let's keep the flag flying high.
It was good to receive a message from Hindustan Coca-Cola, and it was Tanmay Agarwal, who is the head of Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages Global Business Services. Warm congratulations to the entire team of Hindustan Coca-Cola. Moving to the next category, can we have the category name on the screen, please? Can we have the next category on the screen, please? It's an excellence in business services, international servicing. I request, sir, for you to make do the honors, please.
Again, in this category, we had a number of participants. I would say competition was quite severe here. And everyone had scored, I would say, points which we measure. Normally, we have a weighted average kind of a measure which we use. And certainly, A-Bin Beverages, I think you call it A-Bin Bev, GCC Bengaluru, it certainly stood out differently. So the award goes to them.
Okay, A-Bin Bev GCC Services, warm congratulations to the entire team. You are a proud winner of the category 1, Excellence in Business Services, International Servicing. As the backend puts any message from A-Bin Bev, just to share with you, it's a 1700 FT strong shared services. It's not about just the size of the shared services. We also, as Mr. Ranganathan was talking about, various other parameters and metrics. They are multifunction shared services. They have taken about 3 years to reach to a level of maturity. The kind of operations they have is beyond even F&A, HR, supply chain, IT operations, data center, analytics operations, and so on and so forth. And they service close to 50 locations worldwide from India. And in a very short span of 3 years, they have reached a good maturity. So they were pretty much part of it. Now, just to clarify or share, the category 1 is a holistic category, so which covers multiple dimensions of the shared services. It could be people, it could be technology, it could be customer experience, process, etc. So all put together culminates into this category 1. So warm congratulations to AB InBev. Do we have any audio visuals for AB InBev? Yes, we have.
All right, this is Serge de Vos, GCC lead for AB InBev here in India. I want to thank the Shared Services Forum very much for this amazing award. It's an honor to receive this award from an esteemed organization and jury that is filled with industry practitioners and veterans. So thank you very much. I'm super proud of receiving this award because we only started our GCC here in India 3 years ago. But our dream has always been very clear. We wanted to transform our transactional back office to an intelligent operation that was driven by AI and ML. So I cannot be happier to get this award for the AI ML based early warning system that we have rolled out across our finance operations in the last year. The algorithm basically looks for anomalies in our invoicing processes and helped to save over $5 million in co-working capital in a very tough COVID year, as we all know, and at the same time has improved the customer experience. It has been very successful in our European zone, and we're now rolling it out in 2021 in all of our other zones of AB InBev around the world. And this is just one example of how we started transforming our back office through AI ML. I'm sure we will continue this journey as I think this is where the power of India as a location is, combining the talent of the largest business services market globally with the largest talent pool in tech and analytics. So I firmly believe that the collaboration between those two can put the GCCs in the driver's seat to transform their company's operations even globally. So a big thank you to my team. Big congratulations as well to my amazing team for making this happen. Big shout out to the tech operations and analytics teams in our GCC that have worked on this best practice. And a big thank you to everybody in GCC for really embracing this change and this transformation that we started 3 years ago. We should all be very proud that after only 3 years, we are receiving this first very big recognition through this award, and I'm sure it will not be our last one. So thanks to all of you, and let's create our legacy. Thank you.
Oh, that was fantastic hearing, Serge, and I think very, very warm congratulations to the entire AB InBev team and Serge, you for leading that. And as you rightly said, it is not certainly going to be the last one. This is the first one, and I'm sure more to come your way. The only interesting thing as we move to the next two quick awards on the leader side, I think just taking a little bit of on a lighter note, the two companies which received the award is both the beverages company, one which you can drink in the day and the one which you are ready to drink now. So, Hindustan Coca-Cola with Coke in the afternoon, and now with Budweiser all ready to go for it.
Yes, that's
so very interesting. Moving to the next category, this is for the leaders. We have, can we have the category up, please? This is BPM Achiever in Global India. And I think this time we have a couple of winners. So maybe, sir, if you can just make the announcement.
Yes, there are actually two awardees to this category, which is the BPM Achiever in India, in Global India. So I would like to read the citation first, and then not necessarily in any particular order, but then certainly mention the two winners, one after the other. So the citation for this award says, in recognition of stellar contribution in a transformational strategic leadership and operational role in global India, delivering value and business impact. The first award goes to Dr. Sumit Mitra, CEO, Tesco Business Services and Tesco Bangalore.
Very, very warm congratulations to Sumit. Just pick a couple of lines from his profile. Dr. Mitra is a versatile senior executive and board member with 20 years experience in outsourcing, P&L management, and client management. We also had a privilege to have Sumit in the morning in one of the panel. Dr. Mitra is currently the CEO of Tesco PLC's Global Business Services Division and CEO of Tesco Bangalore. He is a board member of Tesco's joint venture, Trent Hypermarket and Booker India with Tata Group. Prior to joining Tesco, Sumit was the managing director of British Telecom, where he conceptualized and executed BT's Global Business Services model with direct responsibility for 10,000 plus employees across 9 countries and several third-party vendors. Sumit led BT GBS as one of the top 25 best employers in India and Budapest, and also being a recipient of Best Shared Services Center in Europe. So warm congratulations to Sumit, Dr. Sumit Mitra. And if we have any audio visuals, we'll request that to be played, please.
Everyone, I feel absolutely honored, privileged, and humbled to receive this award from the Shared Services Forum. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the jury members, Ravi and the team, for selecting me to receive this prestigious award. I feel honored to be in the list of people who have won this award in the past, in the last 9 years. I feel extremely privileged to be in that list. What I really like about Shared Services Forum is the purpose of creating new knowledge and sharing that knowledge across the industry and making a better business and a better future for all of us. It's been a very interesting journey over the last 20 years for me, but it feels like the time has passed really quickly. Whether it's the group strategy director in BT or setting up BT's global services division across 9 countries, or now managing global business services for Tesco and creating value for our shareholders, customers and colleagues, or sitting on the board of a joint venture with the Tata Group. What I feel most privileged is over the last 10 odd years in India, I've created over 40,000 jobs for citizens of India. And I feel extremely honored to have done that. Thank you very much again, Shared Services Forum, for acknowledging me. And thank you, and hope you have a fantastic day ahead. Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's very good. I mean, 40,000 jobs, that's not small, right?
Yes, absolutely. And we take this opportunity to once again express our heartiest congratulations to you, Dr. Sumit Mitra, and keep continuing the kind of work which you're doing. And of course, we will have more opportunities to recognize you as we go ahead.
Yes, it resonates very well with what I had said earlier about actually creating jobs and not trying to evaporate them, because our anxiety to sort of adopt technology, we should be careful that we don't destroy lives. So we have to definitely balance it.
Sure, absolutely.
And I think they have done, some of the leaders have done it extremely well. In fact, when you look at some of the other, entries that we have for this award, there are entities that are employing, several hundred thousands. It's absolutely, I would say, very relieving that. So I move on to the next gentleman who is an awardee for this category, BPM Achievers in India. And again, I read the citation because it is important to drive home the reason why Navneet Bansal, CEO of GSW GBS Limited, has been selected for this category this year. That is in recognition of the stellar contribution in a transformational strategic leadership and operations role in global India, delivering value and business impact. So congratulations, Navneet Bansal.
Absolutely. I think it's a great moment, and to recognize Navneet and our warm congratulations to you, Navneet Bansal. Just a quick few words about Navneet Bansal. Of course, 2 decades plus kind of an experience. He started his journey as an audit manager after his typical CEO work with EY way back in 1999, and then moved on to play a service delivery leader role with Agilent Technologies. Played roles like VP and Director Shared Services with Emphasis. And as part of Emphasis, he was responsible for transitioning across APAC, Europe, and Americas, more than 800 FTEs way back in 2005-06, which was quite early in those days from the kind of shared services concept we're talking about. Then he had an interesting stint with MISIS as a Director F&A SSC. The recent stint and the role since 2016 is playing as a CEO of JSW GBS is very interesting, where he is part of India MNC setting up the shared services. They are 400 plus strong organization. They have been able to drive more than 45% of operating efficiencies without reducing the number of people, but through the process efficiencies, the technology, etc. And that too, typically an Indian multinational kind of a context where a lot of plants spread across locations, etc., where the change management, stakeholder engagement is of a different, expectation. As part of this role, he was instrumental in enabling JSW GBS to receive Best Shared Services Award at Shared Services Forum and other platforms as well about a couple of years back. So warm congratulations once again to Navneet Bansal, and I request if you can have an audio visual, please.
Let me first congratulate SSF on their 10th anniversary. I believe in such a short span of time, SSF has been able to create a platform for sharing of meaningful thought leadership to Indian outsourcing industry. A big kudos to them, and I wish them all the best for their future endeavors as well. Now coming to BPM Achiever, when I heard that, okay, I have been chosen as a BPM Achiever for the year, it was a really proud moment for me. It's an important milestone in my career. And a heartfelt thanks to eminent jury of SSF and all the members who have worked behind it. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all my colleagues, my family, my friends, my well-wishers who have stood by me in last 20-25 years of my career and made this day happen to me. I humbly accept this honor and recognition. Thank you.
Very good.
Absolutely. I think it was fantastic to hear Navneet, and once again, warm congratulations to you, Navneet, and we look forward to having you more often at the shared services, and thank you for wishing us the best for the 10th anniversary. I think as in the morning I was talking about when we started in 2011, we never imagined that we'll be able to sustain for 10 years and grow the way it is now, and even sustain the pandemic. So I'm sure in the next 10 years we'll be having a very different program altogether, and we look forward to participation from all of you who have been really a great support for the Shared Services Forum. With this, it brings to the close of the Excellence Awards and recognition for today. And I know there'll be a lot of anxiety left with the people for tomorrow. Sir, you want to say something as we close the day?
No, I was saying that probably this is only the first installment of the awards. The second installment of the awards, I suppose, is coming tomorrow, because there are more number of people who have been chosen. So that will happen tomorrow, I suppose. And yes, I think you're closing this meeting by now. It's a respectable time. It's about 7 o'clock. In a physical meeting, this would have been probably in one of the hotels, as it normally happens, and it would have been a lot of shaking hands and cheers and whatnot. But we have to get used to this world, It is creditable that Shared Services Forum, you, Rakesh, and Pallavi, and all your team members have put this together and then use the Zoom platform to be able to talk to one another and share our views. Congratulations to SSF. Congratulations to the winners today and the winners tomorrow as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ranganathan. It was fantastic to have you today evening. And sir, as you rightly said, today was the first installment. Tomorrow is the second installment, which is going to be bigger and many more because we have more categories or more number of categories to be awarded tomorrow. So I request you all to keep tuned in tomorrow. Just to give you a quick view, tomorrow we start at 4 o'clock, the same time as we started today, and we'll wrap it by the same time or maybe a little earlier tomorrow evening. The day we start at 4 o'clock with a session from Dr. Rajiv Vade, who is a general physician, a dietitian, quite a renowned name in this space, the medical space, to talk and share more about the lifestyle and the lifestyle-related diseases like diabetics and how we should, professionals like us, should step back and look at the life slightly differently. We'll continue with the serious panel conversations on the outsmarting digital and how to look at the whole curve of the next move as part of the panel session tomorrow, led by some interesting panelists representing large global centers. The last panel in the day will be on the tectonic shift in the culture, which will be an interesting conversation about how to look at this WFO and WFH and many other related cultural challenges and the shift which will be required to be there, and wrapping it with the, or topping it with, if I can say, Excellence Awards and recognition tomorrow evening. So see you guys, have a good evening and take care. I think, I'm sure Hindustan Coca-Cola and AB InBev will have their own beverages much beyond. And both the leaders, cheers to them and all the best and heartiest congratulations to them as well. Thank you and good night.